The arrival of the universe deity demon list initially left everyone puzzled, and then deeply shaken. People were baffled by the sudden appearance of this list, and then awed by the immense power of the rankings. Such a grand gesture, coupled with the disappearance of all Yen immortals, led the remaining grand Yen immortals to speculate. Those with connections were fortunate. They knew that the Qixin Temple had emerged, connecting these two events. However, the lone wanderers without affiliations ventured into perilous lands or secluded domains, attempting to seclude themselves and evade the impending turmoil. Little did they know, this list's arrival marked the fairest assessment of all practitioners in the universe. Even the weakest among them could obtain abundant treasures from the Qixin Temple, similar to the Yen immortals who had already entered the affiliated world of the Qixin Temple. As soon as they entered the affiliated world of the Qixin Temple, they began to comprehend, causing all Yen immortals in the entire universe to comprehend as well. This was merely a method employed by the true spirits to prevent them from fighting among themselves. Such a grand gesture was unprecedented. In the 97th affiliated world, within a ring-shaped realm, numerous starry continents floated. Not only were there Yen immortals who had been plundered into this world, but also some powerful wild beasts born within the realm. However, these wild beasts and indigenous practitioners seemed oblivious to the Yen immortals who had been displaced here. They continued living their leisurely lives. Soon, a voice echoed throughout the entire universe. The Qixin Temple is officially open. This grand voice echoed in the hearts of everyone. In the midst of the vast void of the great desolate wilderness, the battle was still raging. Jiuyu and the others felt the summons, but they were currently struggling on the edge of life and death, with no attention to spare for such matters. On Jiuyu's side, one person stood alone, resisting hundreds of ghostly beings at the 9 Revolutions Grand Yen Immortal level. He had reached the point of exhaustion, his strength nearly depleted. Damn it! Why hasn't the Emperor arrived yet? Jiuyu, usually composed, couldn't help but curse under his breath. The numbers of these ghostly beings were overwhelming. Although he could kill one at the 9 Revolutions Grand Yen Immortal level with a flip of his hand, he couldn't contend with their sheer quantity. Boom! Another 9 Revolutions Grand Yen Immortal couldn't hold on any longer. He had to burn his own Tao, unleashing his most powerful strike. Then his entire body began to disintegrate, eventually vanishing into the void. One after another, the remaining Grand Yen Immortals burned their own origin, unable to escape and unable to exterminate all the ghostly beings. They had no choice but to burn their own Tao sources to make one final contribution for others. Jian Wushuang also snapped out of his anger amidst the roars. He turned his head and glanced at Hu Qing, hurriedly saying, "Don't look. They can't hold on anymore." Upon hearing the shout, Hu Qing's eyes cleared a bit. Behind him, a rift in space appeared, and a phantom-like ghostly being was desperately struggling to break free from the engulfing void. "Be careful!" Luo Shui, standing beside her, exclaimed, attempting to retreat and help. But in her haste, the ghostly being seized the opportunity and lunged directly at Luo Shui's neck. Clang! Whoosh! An incredibly elegant sword energy, along with its peculiar angle, slashed toward Luo Shui's chest. The sharpness of the sword energy sent shivers down one's spine. The power of the strike was even stronger than when dealing with Xiang Bingyun, and it was more stable. Splurt! The 3-9 Revolutions Grand Yen Immortal level ghostly beings entwined with Luo Shui directly turned into a wisp of black smoke, then completely disappeared. Luo Shui stood still for a moment. When Jian Wushuang made his move, all she saw was a seemingly casual sword strike, without sensing any trace of the profound Tao power. However, as the sword energy passed by her, she felt a terrifying aura. She was certain that if that sword had struck her, she would have undoubtedly perished. How can he be so strong? Luo Shui wondered, but she didn't have time to dwell on it now. Hu Qing, stay here to protect fellow Taoist Luo Shui. One will go help the others, Jian Wushuang said, flashing a faint smile as he passed by Luo Shui. Be careful, kind sir, Hu Qing cautioned, then swiftly turned around. a brown staff piercing through a monster attempting to crawl out of a crack in the void. Jian Wushuang ascended, surveying the area before launching his rescue mission. Swish! 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 Several swords were swung, instantly annihilating numerous ghosts at the level of 9 revolutions. It's strange. These ghosts clearly have no consciousness, so why are they so afraid of heart power? Although Jian Wushuang hadn't deliberately infused heart power into his casual strikes, he had already grasped the sword techniques of the heart sword world. Even his casual strikes contained a bit of power. Puffs! Dozens of ghosts dispersed, instantly alleviating the pressure on the local battlefield. Whether it was the leader of the Tongtian Buddha world or other cultivators, they all wore expressions of disbelief. A 3 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal casually swung his sword, directly obliterating dozens of ghosts at the level of the 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal. This level of strength difference was staggering. Especially the prodigy from the Dongyan realm was dumbfounded. He clearly felt that Jian Wushuang's Tao was weak, so why was his strength so overwhelming? Others shared the same thoughts, but there was simply no time to discuss this now. Leave this to me. You all go help the others. Jian Wushuang's eyes were sharp. Even without truly utilizing heart power, if he used the 5th level of the ultimate Tao's heartsword world, he could probably kill ghosts at the level of the perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal. As Jian Wushuang's voice echoed, everyone finally snapped back to reality, nodding quickly before rushing toward other cracks where battles were taking place. The Dongyan realm prodigy still didn't understand. Jian Wushuang's Tao seemed weak, so why was his strength so overwhelming? He must be hiding his true power. His sword technique is unique, perfectly countering these ghosts. Don't overthink it. Everyone, go help the others. Try to delay until the Emperor arrives for support. Understood. The group scattered, going to aid other cultivators. Just as these people evacuated the area, another large group of ghosts swept in. This time, among the ghosts, there was one at the level of the 9th stage perfect Grand Yen Immortal. It emitted a dim golden light, containing fragments of the Emperor's incomplete Tao within its illusory and ethereal body. Its hollow eye sockets resembled black holes. Because it contained the Emperor's fragmented Tao, these ghosts could also use some of the techniques the Emperor had learned in his lifetime, although these techniques were naturally not as powerful as the Emperor's. Still, it surprised Jian Wushuang greatly. The other ghosts at the level of the 629 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal were one thing, but this perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal level ghost gave him a feeling akin to the deceased Xiang Binyun. However, dealing with these ghosts now was much simpler than dealing with Xiang Binyun. Even if Xiang Binyun was weak, he probably ranked in the top 100 million among all the Grand Yen Immortals in the entire universe. This perfected 9 revolutions level ghost was only comparable to Xiang Binyun in terms of strength. Fortunately, his speed and defense far surpassed those of the creatures he faced. Jian Wushuang's sword roamed, first clearing out the weaker monsters before confronting a formidable ghost at the 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal level. He understood the principle that even ants, no matter how small, could be overwhelming in numbers. He didn't fear battle and was not afraid of the trials between life and death. Although the monsters spawned after the fall of the Emperor were qualitatively stronger than the vast army of corpses, their numbers were fewer. Moreover, these monsters wouldn't exist for long. As the great desolate wilderness heavenly laws grew stronger, they would be assimilated into the source. These monsters were all formed from the foundational avenues of the emperors, a great supplement for the world's origin. Despite killing so many, those who benefited most were the great desolate wilderness heavenly laws. Suddenly, an idea flashed in Jian Wushuang's mind. The great desolate wilderness heavenly laws had just formed and couldn't personally suppress these monsters yet. What if he used his one-thought universe to devour all the monsters within its range? Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up. If this worked, absorbing so many fragments of the Emperor's avenues with his extreme Tao source would undoubtedly strengthen him significantly. There might even be a chance for a breakthrough. His heart power had grown stronger. His soul realm had reached the 6 revolutions level. Such ordinary barriers couldn't hinder him. If he hadn't worried about unstable foundations initially, he would have broken through to the 6 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal in the starry sky. This was also the reason Hu Qing managed to step into the 9 revolutions directly but fell back to the 6 revolutions later. The 6 revolutions was a slope. The 9 revolutions marked the vertical height and was the limit for Grand Yen Immortals. Advancing to the level of a Grand Yen Immortal meant that even if one remained in seclusion and didn't venture out, they could become a 6 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal based on their comprehension of the Tao. However, there was a certain resistance at the 9 revolutions, requiring both opportunities and battles. As for achieving the perfected 9 revolutions level, this was a hurdle before the Tao merging. Failing to achieve this meant certain death. Only by becoming a perfected 9 revolutions, by perfecting everything within oneself, could one attempt the Tao merging. However, for most perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals, they only perfected their foundational avenue. Perfecting one's physical body, soul, and mental state to this level was incredibly challenging. Perfecting these cultivations doesn't guarantee successful enlightenment. So, most of the perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals sought opportunities, either through a stroke of luck or seizing the moment, to merge their Taos, attempting to cleanse themselves through the flow of destiny. However, in the end, countless Grand Yen Immortals faltered at this crucial step. For those who had mastered the 5th grade fundamental origin of the Great Tao, merging Taos was the simplest. Yet, even this seemingly straightforward path had only a 1 in a million chance of success. If it were as easy as Emperor Tongtian, there wouldn't be so few emperors on the universe deity demon list. The current original universe had reached maturity, a time when the most powerful beings were abundant, and various paths had long been explored. Ambitious strongmen, however, didn't choose the 5th grade fundamental origin of the Great Tao as their life path. Even those with moderate comprehension abilities, the Grand Yen Immortals with self-awareness, opted for the 4th grade Great Tao, aspiring to become elites within their respective factions. The 3rd grade fundamental origin was the backbone of a faction, representing the future upper echelons. The 2nd grade fundamental origin of the Great Tao was relatively ambiguous, ranging from common to exceptionally unique. For instance, the Divine Emperor of Eastwood had achieved emperor status through a 2nd grade Great Tao, yet even after gaining dominion over higher-level worlds, his strength remained average among the 4th-rank emperors. Zhen Wuyang's true martial Tao was also a 2nd grade fundamental origin of the Great Tao. However, he only controlled a mid-level world and possessed peak 4th-tier power. Within the 2nd grade fundamental origin of the Great Tao, the disparity between common and exceptional paths could be immense, spanning tens of thousands of miles in difference. In the world of immortals, there were emperor-level beings, holders of 2nd grade Grand Tao, ranging from the pinnacle of the 3rd stage to the formidable 5th stage. Such disparities were the norm. Naturally, with differences come difficulties. Despite the numerous perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals listed in the Universe Deity Demon list, only a handful might eventually become emperors. The Grand Yen Immortals, who had achieved the perfected 9 revolutions, found it exceedingly difficult to perish in the original universe. Most of them met their demise on the Tao merging. Jian Wushuang had also grasped this through cryptic texts. He embodied the ultimate Tao, but the challenge of unification was monumental. Now, with the addition of the extreme Tao, the pressure of Tao unification overwhelmed him, leaving him breathless. Fortunately, his heart power had reached the 4th level, making his state of mind stronger than most emperors. The momentary darkness from before was instantly swept away. Tao merging. Jian Wushuang shook his head. He was still far from achieving unification. Considering the time in the cosmic realm, it had only been a few days since he had advanced from a Yen Immortal to a Grand Yen Immortal. Contemplating unification at this point was premature. Since his breakthrough, he hadn't had time to stabilize his realm. Either he was recovering his divine body or engaging in battles. For now, he decided to use this opportunity to practice with this ghost at the perfected 9 revolutions level in front of him. Perhaps, just as he imagined, he might really succeed. During this expedition to the great desolate wilderness, he not only nearly died at the hands of Xiang Bingyun but also had all his treasures destroyed, including his divine sword, which was now in a sorry state. People who didn't know might assume that the divine sword was always like this. Although the sword's body was severely damaged, the source of the sword Dao was intact. The ghost's fangs scraped against the divine sword, emitting an extremely unpleasant sound from the ghost's mouth. Jian Wushuang quickly retreated, barely stabilizing his figure while holding the sword upside down. Heart Sword World. The fifth level of the ultimate sword Dao, it was Jian Wushuang's most satisfying sword move to date. This sword had once made the 9 revolutionaries Grand Yen Immortal Gu Yuan kneel and worship, and had even made Xiang Bingyun, who had attained the perfected 9 revolutions, tremble in fear. Swish! A vast world of swords descended from the void. Countless sword shadows imbued with heart power, akin to hungry wolves, pounced on the ghost. Hiss! Countless sword shadows pierced through the ethereal bodies of the ghosts and monsters. Each time they passed through, the ghosts emitted sizzling black mist. This was the terror of heart power. Once tainted, it could burn their souls. These ghosts were originally soul entities. Jian Wushuang now understood why these ghosts were so afraid of heart power. No ghosts in the heart, no ghosts in the world. The scope of the Heartsword world began to expand, directly encompassing everyone. Jiuyu turned around and looked backward, not paying attention to Jian Wushuang's involvement. After all, there were only a small number of weak ghosts behind, which could be handled by the few 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals there. He led dozens of Grand Yen Immortals, standing at the forefront. Most of the ghosts here were at the 9 revolutions level, and even the perfected 9 revolutions ones were quite common. The moment the projection of the Heartsword world descended, the ghosts suddenly took a step back involuntarily. They had no consciousness, but the fear of heart power was innate, a supreme rule set by the universe. Regardless of whether they had consciousness or not, any soul would fear heart power. The hollow eyes of the ghostly apparition showed no fear. Although naturally terrified, they still surged into the world of swords. Brother Jiuyu, what's happening? Several perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal, unaware of the situation, thought it was Jiuyu's doing and approached, inquiring one after another. It's him. Jiuyu looked towards Jian Wushuang behind him, his eyes narrowing. Countless sword chi surrounded the Heartsword world. With a casual motion, Jiuyu grabbed a strand of sword intent in his hand. The snow-white sword intent in Jiuyu's hand was incredibly gentle, like a swimming fish, a practitioner of heart power, hidden quite deeply. Now we have it easy. Jiuyu released the sword intent in his hand, looked up at Jian Wushuang, and nodded. Heart power. Strong beings from other worlds were still somewhat puzzled. I didn't expect that beneath the Emperor, there would be someone who could cultivate heart power to such a level. Impressive. The leaders of the Wuliang realm bowed in respect, their palms pressed together. In their Wuliang world, second only to the Wuliang Buddha was the Heart Buddha. That Heart Buddha was incredibly powerful, and his methods were mysterious. He had left several secret methods of heart power cultivation on the Wuliang mountain. Countless Grand Yen Immortals rarely cultivated heart power, let alone mastering the secret techniques of it. In their eyes, cultivating heart power as a Grand Yen Immortal was simply impossible. Little did they know, on Wuliang Mountain, a 3 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal once touched the threshold of heart power, only to fall in the vast great desolate wilderness. This fair-skinned monk had accidentally acquired a transmission from the Heart Buddha, and out of respect, Wuliang Buddha granted him a fragment of the Bodhi Heartwood. It elevated his mental state, significantly aiding his cultivation of heart power. Unfortunately, the monk eventually perished. In his final moments, he passed his most significant opportunity, the Bodhi Heartwood, to Jian Wushuang. At that time, during a fierce battle and aided by the effects of the Bodhi Heartwood, Jian Wushuang experienced an extraordinary enlightenment. It allowed his consciousness to astrally project into the starry expanse. Realizing the origins of his newfound abilities, Jian Wushuang felt profound gratitude for the departed monk, yet lamented the monk's incomplete fate. Having learned the monk's posthumous name from Hu Qing, Jian Wushuang resolved that if the opportunity arose, he would venture into the Wuliang realm to witness the monk's Dharma manifestation. The posthumous name, Complete Annihilation. Hu Qing, guarding the fairy Luo Shui behind him, turned to look at Jian Wushuang suspended in the air, murmuring softly, Master Uncle, if you were still alive, there might be hope for you to cultivate heart power in the future. Luo Shui, standing behind him, also gazed towards the void. Friend Wushuang is unexpectedly powerful. Even this little monk, you've been hiding your true strength well. I risked my life protecting both of you for such a long time. Luo Shui rested her hands on her hips, tempted to give Hui Kunji's head a knock, but ultimately refrained. Well done. Hu Qing clasped his hands together, bowing his head respectfully. In the void, Jian Wushuang raised his hand. Gripping the emptiness, an endless sword intent filled the entire space. His mental realm was several times stronger than the last time. Annihilate! With the surge of sword intent, the bursting sword energy transformed into a massive cage, trapping the ghosts that had just invaded his mental realm. There were millions of these ghosts. Among them, several hundred belonged to the perfected 9 revolutions of the Grand Yen Immortal realm. With so many ghosts, the sum of the great Tao contained within them could rival the origin of a small world. After all, the fall of over a dozen emperors, combined with the great Tao origins of 2 fourth-tier emperors, exceeded the norm of a small world. Cackling, the cries of millions of ghosts echoed, their ethereal bodies completely incinerated by the heart power within Jian Wushuang's sword intent. Although they lacked consciousness, the profound pain in the depths of their souls made them suffer unbearably. The weaker ones, ghosts of the 3 and 6 revolutions level, were directly slain by the sword chi. Those able to withstand the sword chi were the 9 revolutions or perfected 9 revolutions ghosts, but enduring the sword chi was more painful for them than being instantly obliterated. Being killed outright was a relief, at least there was a quick end. Those who endured the sword chi had to endure the relentless torment of heart power, making their existence agonizing. Some powerful ghosts began to struggle, go mad, and rush at Jian Wushuang. Be careful. Their strength hasn't been weakened much. Zhou Yu's figure flickered, but Jian Wushuang stopped him. I have a treasure that can deal with these ghosts. You go ahead. I'll cover the rear, Jian Wushuang said sincerely. Indeed, he was genuinely earnest. As long as these people went ahead, he could openly incorporate these ghosts into the origin of his heart power universe. Moreover, he could take this opportunity to escape from these people and make a swift getaway. As for the Qixin Temple, he never thought of contending for it, although he learned from Zhou Yu that there was a secret in the Qixin Temple that could make one the most pinnacle existence. These things were too distant from them. A large group of emperors were watching there. Even if there were benefits, it was not his turn as a Grand Yen Immortal. If he went, he would just be cannon fodder. So Jian Wushuang decided to shake off these people. With the strength of a Grand Yen Immortal, he could travel across the entire universe. Seizing this opportunity, he planned to venture into other great worlds. And there are treasures like this? Zhou Yu was somewhat incredulous. But at this point, if they stayed here once those monsters broke through the Heartsword world, they would be trapped here. It might be better to listen to Jian Wushuang and take the chance to escape. Trust him this time. At this moment, most people had the same thoughts as Jian Wushuang. They all wanted to leave the great desolate wilderness as soon as possible, but their strength was not enough. If they encountered monsters again halfway, without so many strong people sticking together, they wouldn't survive. For now, they could only temporarily follow Zhou Yu. Hurry! The sword world can't hold on for long. My treasure can only kill this batch of monsters. Once the next batch of monsters appears from the cracks in the void, I won't be able to escape. Jian Wushuang's face showed urgency. He had the look of a rough monk persuading someone to escape. The figure of Hu Qing was mixed in the crowd. His gaze had been on Jian Wushuang, and he understood Jian Wushuang's thoughts. He was no longer the young novice monk he used to be. Anything in the world seemed like a mirror to him now. Then he glanced at Jian Wushuang. The two exchanged glances, instantly understanding each other's thoughts. Since you insist on this, we'll take the lead. Remember, if you can't fight, escape in the direction we're heading. Maybe the emperors are already on their way here. Zhou Yu reassured them before leaving. Jian Wushuang did show a bitter smile. Their current location was very close to the Qixin Temple. If the emperors were really coming to save them, they would have arrived long ago. If even the emperors couldn't break free, it showed how dangerous that direction was. When Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing desperately fled, they managed to escape quite far. Even though Jian Wushuang was flying at full speed or teleporting continuously, it still took them a day to reach the Qixin temple. But the emperor was different. If he truly intended to rescue them, he could probably arrive with just one teleport. Moreover, while they were fighting against the sprites, he could sense a terrifying aura emanating from the direction of the Qixin temple. The being emitting this aura had either fallen or an unprecedented great battle had occurred. Such a powerful clash between beings could be sensed from such a distance. If they got closer, they might be crushed by the fluctuations of the aura. Jian Wushuang didn't know that this was happening under the suppression of Qishui and Demon Lord Fengyu. If Daogong did not suppress it, the aura waves spreading out could have injured their divine bodies. Watching the figures of the others disappearing, a fierce glint appeared in Jian Wushuang's eyes. At this moment, he no longer concealed his strength. The sword world was even more magnificent and powerful than before. The sword intents transformed into sword shadows, effortlessly harvesting those weak demons. The origin that could rival a small world. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but lick his lips. If he could absorb the Emperor's origin and Tao within these demons' bodies, his strength would probably skyrocket immediately, perhaps several hundred times stronger than his cultivation of billions of years in the starry sky. Phew! Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, his fate hanging in the balance once again. If he couldn't devour them, he had the power to escape. Conversely, if he could consume these origins, he wouldn't leave the great desolate wilderness so soon. This place was his treasure trove. One thought universe. Buzz. A bubble, as small as a pinhole, began to expand from Jian Wushuang's mind. Boom! Powerful aura erupted from him. The bubble kept expanding, rushing out of his mind, instantly encompassing the sword world in the void. Jian Wushuang was somewhat surprised. When his thought power surged just now, it was unusually excited, as if very interested in those ghosts. Manipulated by his thought power, the bubble kept expanding, gradually spreading across the entire void. 100,000 miles, 300,000 miles, 800,000 miles, 1,000,000 miles. It had already exceeded the scale of his first attempt. The origins in the universe seemed to awaken like a baby, wandering around the bubble, and the scope of the universe was still expanding. Boom! 2,000,000 miles. Stars suddenly appeared in the previously desolate universe. Although these stars were illusory, they contained Jian Wushuang's supreme path. 3,000,000 miles. The bubble continued to expand, showing no signs of stopping. This range surpassed some continents in the mortal realms. If it continued to expand, Jian Wushuang's thought power would have struggled to endure it. Boom! 5,000,000 miles, and finally the bubble came to a halt. The origins of the one-thought universe returned to Jian Wushuang's body. Phew! I actually managed to exclude the heavenly Tao within the great desolate wilderness. Jian Wushuang was astonished. The middle-grade universe's great Tao was unexpectedly excluded by him. Although the other party had just been born, it was still the great Tao of a middle-grade universe, yet it was being barred from entry. Incredible! Jian Wushuang exclaimed. If he could expand the scope of one-thought universe beyond the great desolate wilderness itself, wouldn't he be able to devour the entire great desolate wilderness? As this thought crossed his mind, a warning from the supreme rules appeared in his consciousness. Evidently, this was not feasible. The great wilderness's heavenly path belonged to the original universe. Even if he became stronger, he couldn't swallow it. He could only devour the origins that existed within the world. However, these origins either resided in cosmic mysteries or were within the personal worlds of some super-powerful beings, which were beyond his reach. It was only during the recent Emperor War that he had the opportunity to take advantage of the situation and devour these Emperor origins. Although these also belonged to the origins of the original universe, they were just minor gains. The original universe's origins simply wouldn't pay attention to such trivial matters. Jian Wushuang looked towards the sky. At the pinnacle of the universe, if my universe could rival the original universe, It would probably be the universe peak that emperors dream of. To make one thought universe comparable to the original universe, he probably had to advance his extreme Tao to the 8th level. Even reaching the 7th level in Ultimate Sword Tao would require him to achieve Tao unification. The extreme Tao would probably need to reach the 6th level before he could merge it. Tao fusion. It was a shackle that transcended the peak of life. Many outstanding talents were trapped at this step, and he had no certainty that he could achieve Tao fusion. For now, he should collect all the benefits he had at hand. Jian Wushuang harnessed the yen power within a range of 5 million miles, once again transcending several thresholds in his abilities. His strength now reached approximately the perfected 9 revolutions. Many grand yen immortals outside, especially those who had escaped from the ghosts and monsters, had taken note of Jian Wushuang's fluctuating rank. Brother Jiuyu, you've actually entered the top 500 in the entire universe, exclaimed many grand yen immortals in awe of Jiuyu's power. The heaven-reaching Buddhist realm recognized as the outstanding young talent, second only to Jiu, barely made it into the top 100,000. The gap was simply staggering. If a real fight broke out, he probably wouldn't withstand even one of Jiyu's breaths. Jiyu relaxed at this moment, gazing at the astonishing universe deity demon list. He wasn't overly interested in his rank. Most of those ahead of him were practitioners of ultimate Tao, and he wasn't satisfied with his current Tao. He continued to integrate more Taos. He had comprehended several Taos just within the 2nd grade alone. He pursued the unity of myriad Taos. He still had a long wave to go. Once he achieved the unity of myriad Taos, his Tao would be as formidable as any ultimate Tao. Look, it's Brother Wushuang. His rank is changing. Everyone followed their gaze. They were all powerful grand yen immortals, and the rankings of millions were within their sight. 150 million. He must have made a breakthrough temporarily. He did mention having a special treasure. He probably utilized that to break through. But being able to surpass millions in one go indicates a significant change in his strength, casually remarked a genius from the Eastern domain. His rank was within the top 10 million, making him one of the top grand yen immortals at the 9 revolutions. This ranking encompassed the entire universe. There were thousands of higher worlds and countless intermediate worlds. In these vast worlds, there were countless grand yen immortals. Even if becoming a 9 revolutions grand yen immortal was exceptionally difficult, there were still hundreds of millions of them. To enter the top 10 million among hundreds of millions of powerful beings was truly something to be proud of. No, it's still changing. What? He just entered the top 100 million, exclaimed Luo Shui. For others, entering the top 100 million might not be significant, but for Jian Wushuang, a 3 revolutions grand yen immortal, he was the only one in the entire universe. Zhou Yu's eyes flickered with incredulity. Is this the ultimate Tao? A 3 revolutions, comparable to the perfected 9 revolutions. He had great confidence in his unity of myriad Taos. However, even against 9 revolutions, he didn't dare to think he could match the perfected 9 revolutions. The unity of myriad Taos grew stronger as one progressed, reaching a level where it could attain the ultimate Tao. The young novice, Hu Qing, paid no attention to the astonishment around him. Instead, his gaze was fixed upon the ranking. He sought a familiar face from his memories. Ever since he had embarked on this Tao, a flood of memories had surged in his mind. These memories had bestowed upon him knowledge of cosmic secrets, such as the process of reaching the pinnacle of the universe and the collapse of the heavenly realms in the past. The owner of these memories possessed the strength of a top 5th-tier emperor, making him a formidable presence in the universe back in the day. Brother Jiuyu, can you discern the purpose of this universe deity demon list? And why has it suddenly appeared here? A genius of the Eastern domain shifted the topic, looking at Jiuyu. Jiuyu shook his head and replied, I do not know. However, it seems to be related to the Qishan temple mentioned by the emperor. Indeed, besides the Qishan temple, there was hardly anyone in the entire original universe with such grand ambitions. Upon hearing this, everyone calmed down. Initially discussing who could be behind this, they now realized that aside from the Qishan temple, there was no other plausible explanation. It appeared they had come to the right conclusion this time. Despite the danger, there was also boundless opportunity in this venture. The deity demon list had just begun. In the pitch-black void, a sudden burst of intense light erupted, blinding everyone present. Open your eyes. That's the direction our escape lies. People shielded their eyes from the blinding light, squinting towards the direction they had fled. That's probably the treasure of Brother Wuxia. Truly powerful, worthy of a practitioner of the ultimate Tao. Hu Qing, you need to work harder too. Brother Wuxia is so strong at the 3 revolutions. You also follow the ultimate Tao, and you're at the 6 revolutions, but your strength still falls a bit short compared to Brother Wuxia. Luo Shui covered her face, peeking through her fingers at the source of the intense light, all the while chattering to the young monk Hu Qing. Indeed, Hu Qing closed his eyes, refusing to look, and said slowly, Brother Wuxia has always been stronger than me. I greatly admire him. The blinding light was the eruption of Jian Wuxia's origin. At this moment, his body's supreme Tao origin underwent an unprecedented change, and the entire universe of his thoughts was filled with countless rays of light. These rays of light were all cracks, signs of the impending rupture of the universe of his thoughts. However, the demons and monsters had not yet been entirely consumed. If the universe ruptured and he was severely injured, he wouldn't be able to escape even if he wanted to. The universe, resembling bubbles, gave rise to countless fissures. These cracks, akin to rivers, continually spawned tributaries, spreading throughout the cosmos. Jian Wuxia, however, couldn't afford to concern himself with these intricacies at the moment. Desperately, he suppressed the primal origin of the great Tao. The primal force flowed through his body, no longer merely suppressed but overwhelming him entirely. The power of the Tao surpassed his innate strength, resulting in a backlash, a consequence of the great Tao's formidable nature. Fortunately, his soul had been nurtured to the 6th level through the cultivation of his heart power, barely enabling him to control this surging force. No, I can't hold on any longer. Jian Wuxia endured immense torment. The overwhelming might of the origin threatened to rupture his very being. He had overestimated his abilities. With the arrow already on the string, he had no choice but to change his course on the fly. Embracing the breakthrough amidst this life and death situation, his yen power circulated within, enveloped by the external origin. He aimed to use these 2 forces to counterbalance each other, facilitating his own breakthrough. Jian Wuxia closed his eyes, and in his mind, the panoramic view of a primordial universe appeared. The golden primordial source flowed like quicksand, descending from the top of the circular universe, nearly covering the entire primordial universe. Jian Wuxia gritted his teeth, enduring the pain, and began his breakthrough. The difference between Grand Yen Immortals and Yen Immortals lay in the manifestation of the great Tao within their bodies, leaking out from their origins. The broader the great Tao manifested within, the stronger the power of the Grand Yen Immortal. When at the 3 revolutions level, the great Tao within them stood several feet tall. By the 6th stage, it needed to be elevated to 100 feet. This was the best and most achievable aspect. The threshold from the 3 to the 6 revolutions was not particularly high. It wasn't as high as the threshold from Yen Immortal to Grand Yen Immortal. The former only required an increase of several tens of times, while the latter needed an increase of 1,000 times. Throughout history, there were far fewer Yen Immortals who could fight Grand Yen Immortals beyond their stage, primarily due to the vast disparity in the levels of the Tao. Therefore, breaking through from the 3 to 6 revolutions was much simpler than a Yen Immortal breaking through to become a Grand Yen Immortal. However, Jian Wuxia was currently trapped both internally and externally. At this moment, the difficulty of his breakthrough was not much different from that of a Yen Immortal breaking through to become a Grand Yen Immortal. The golden light shimmered. Jian Wuxia concentrated, recalling the giant he had encountered in the starry sky. When he had broken the cage, golden light had burst forth from his chest. In the end, the liberation of life allowed him to break through. With a colossal axe and an indomitable force, he shattered countless laws, breaking the supreme rules. Finally, he shattered the cage of the stars. Although at that time it was nothing to Jian Wushuang, considering his current state, he was far from being able to achieve such a feat. He was like a giant himself, capable of sacrificing his life and breaking countless laws, liberating himself from his constraints. However, now, he found it incredibly challenging to accomplish the same feat. Crash. Golden sands cascaded down like a thought of the universe, attempting to engulf the entire outer appearance of the cosmos. Meanwhile, Jian Wushuang's body was being devoured by the golden primordial source. Break and then establish. Jian Wushuang suddenly opened his eyes wide, and his aura reversed. The divine sword in his hand had long been eroded, yet even without a physical sword, there was a sword in his mind. Thought power materialized. The sword was everywhere. He stood proudly within his own universe. At this moment, he was the master of this domain. Origin, Great Tao, Universe, all illusions. 6 revolutions? Blink, and it shatters. Hum. A powerful aura erupted from him. This was the power of the 6 revolutions, but Jian Wushuang was unimpressed. Calmly, he raised his hand, and a sword appeared in it. With a simple motion from above, he cleaved down. Crash. This strike seemed ordinary but was profoundly dreadful. This sword strike is called immortality. Jian Wushuang roared. The sword shadows sliced through the universe. Silence. Then, a dazzling light burst forth, and with a single thought, the universe split into 2 halves. He reappeared in the void. Swish. The golden origin on his body and the sands of the original universe instantly transformed into a new cosmos. This universe expanded even faster, directly spreading out millions of miles away. This was breaking and then establishing, first breaking through his own cage and then constructing his own world. With a single thought, the universe reformed. Jian Wushuang's origin and Great Tao were elevated to a new level. The 4th level of the Supreme Tao, Great Decay Mastery. He did it, not only breaking through to the 6 revolutions but also elevating the extreme Tao to the 4th level. At this moment, the ultimate Tao also loosened. Soon, he would reach the 6th level. Devouring the origin indeed had boundless benefits. Although it was related to his own abilities, without these ghosts and monsters, he couldn't have possibly advanced so quickly. It was safe to say they complemented each other. This path of devouring was not without risks. Any mistake now, and he would be lost in this vast, great, desolate wilderness forever. The journey of enlightenment proved to be more challenging due to the hurdles within himself, not the beings within the universe, a fact that amused Jian Wushuang. He felt like he had transcended the universe itself. Below, the demonic forces, enshrouded, found their strengths diminished by 90%. The extreme Tao's suppression rendered them motionless. Especially his heart power. It had grown remarkably stronger, partly due to this. As for his thought power, these demons were merely countless thoughts of emperors, transformed into grotesque entities. Yet, his formidable thought power could still handle them. Crossing into the 4th level of the extreme Tao, his thought power surpassed that of emperors. The demons formed from these imperial thoughts were no match for him. Annihilate! With a single thought, the demons perished. Countless demons ceased struggling and stood silently in the cosmos. Gradually, their bodies dissipated, leaving behind fragmented remnants of the original Tao. These fragments appeared in Jian Wushuang's universe, naturally devoured by his own source. If it weren't for Jian Wushuang, these sources would have returned to the great desolate wilderness's heavenly Tao. Now they were intercepted by him. If Luya knew that he had devoured all these sources, he probably would have wished to crush him. So many emperors died in his Tao arena, and he still aimed to break through. Little did he know that all the benefits from these deceased emperors had been taken by a grand Yen Immortal. However, the 6 crows were currently suppressed by the Eternal Tower, rendering them unable to intervene and compete for these sources. Phew! Jian Wushuang exhaled deeply, his hands open, absorbing the remnants quietly. These remnants contained Emperor Supreme techniques, and Jian Wushuang meticulously pondered over them. After all, they were techniques at the Emperor level. His current mastery of Sword Tao was self-created. But when it came to the control of his physical body and yen power, he had yet to obtain any emperor-level skills. By comprehending these emperor-level skills now, he could potentially find it easier to cultivate them in the future. The power of the remnants resembled an ocean, and Jian Wushuang was akin to a black hole, devouring the entire sea. His strength now sufficient, he absorbed all these remnants to stabilize his own source. Swiftly, the Supreme Tao remnants reached the peak of the 4th level, and the Sword Tao source directly broke through to the 6th level. After absorbing all these remnants, Jian Wushuang's Sword Tao source reached its peak at the 6th level. This time, Jian Wushuang's gains exceeded his foresight. He had to thank Zhen Wuyang for banishing him to the great desolate wilderness. In just a few years, he managed to make such significant breakthroughs. With the recent changes in the great desolate wilderness, Zhen Wuyang might have come as well. If they met, Jian Wushuang would genuinely owe him thanks. It's time to go, Jian Wushuang thought, and the entire pocket universe folded at his will. After glancing around, he fixed his direction and prepared to leave. At the same time, in the direction of Qishan Temple, an emperor was striding over. Qianshou, go fetch them. Bring all these little ones here. The voice of Tong Tian Buddha resonated in his ears. He was also reminded that Hu Qing and Jian Wushuang must be brought along. With just a step, he arrived at the empty space where Jian Wushuang had previously devoured monsters. With his karma-fueled perception, his golden eyes pierced through the endless void. One hand reached through the boundless emptiness, aiming for Jian Wushuang, while the other grabbed for Zhou Yu and the others. Zhou Yu and the others were fortunate. They sensed that it was the Qianshou Buddha from the Buddhist realm and didn't resist much, falling into the enormous palm without much struggle. Jian Wushuang, on the other hand, was in a dire situation. He desperately tried to escape the palm's grasp, but no matter how he struggled, he couldn't break free. The Qianshou Buddha grew somewhat irritated and directly seized Jian Wushuang. Before the palm returned, Qianshou Buddha took another step, appearing in the Qishui Hall. The two palms, traversing the void, met and descended onto another palm. Wushuang, we meet again. Zhou Yu smiled slightly, reaching out to help Jian Wushuang up from the ground. Are you all right? Luo Shui and the young monk Hu Qing hurried over to Jian Wushuang. What's going on? Jian Wushuang was somewhat bewildered. Don't panic. It's Emperor Qianshou. We're saved. Zhou Yu, as an ancient perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal, naturally recognized Qianshou Buddha Lord's divine power. In an instant, Jian Wushuang understood, and in his heart he cursed in anger. Having finally managed to shake off those pursuers, he found himself caught again. He truly had no desire to accompany these emperors to the so-called Qishan Temple. In his view, even if the Qishan Temple held the opportunity to elevate a perfected 9 revolutions to the status of an emperor, it was probably just a slim chance. It was utterly useless to him. He had just reached the 6 revolutions. Reaching the 9 revolutions was a distant dream. Going to the Qishan Temple now would only make him cannon fodder. Unfortunately, Emperor personally brought him back, so he couldn't leave even if he wanted to. Well, I must express my gratitude to Emperor. Jian Wushuang steadied his stance, his face sincere. Seeing his sincerity, Zhou Yu softened his tone. Qianshou Lord Buddha is easy to talk to. I will introduce you later. Jian Wushuang's face turned red, his voice low. No, the Emperor is busy with myriad matters, and now you are vying for opportunities. I won't disturb him. He couldn't forget the scenes from moments ago, when he had attempted to escape multiple times, only to be caught and brought back each time. He doubted Qianshou Buddha would welcome him warmly either. It was better not to provoke that anger. Although he could claim ignorance about an emperor's methods, there was no need to lie. He decided to take one step at a time. A massive palm swiftly pierced through the pitch-black void, leading to a bright light ahead. Crash! The void tore open and closed again. Jian Wushuang and his companions landed in a grand hall. Come to me! A stern voice echoed. They looked up to see a towering Buddha right in front of them. Before they could say anything, they were teleported behind the giant Buddha. Gazing at the colossal figure and the enormous palms, It seemed Xianxia Buddha was indeed present. As they settled behind the Buddha, they could finally see their surroundings clearly. In addition to the many-armed Buddha, the hall contained several hundred extremely powerful auras, each belonging to emperor-level experts. Everyone gasped in awe. It was the first time any of them had witnessed such a grand spectacle. Normally, meeting even one emperor was a rare event, akin to a miracle. Yet here, a multitude of emperors had gathered together. Some found it hard to believe. Zhen Wushuang was fortunate to have met dozens of emperors in the heaven-reaching Buddhist realm, so he could still comprehend the magnitude of this gathering. Dozens of emperors had arrived from the heaven-reaching Buddhist realm alone. Undoubtedly, there were powerful emperors from other worlds within the Grand Hall. However, as he scanned the surroundings, he didn't spot Zhen Wuyang. Logically, the Great Sea region was very close by. Zhen Wuyang should have arrived by now. Zhen Wushuang felt perplexed. However, upon seeing the eternal collapse of the void outside the Grand Hall, he thought he might be standing on the wrong side. Inside the Qishui Palace, Zhen Wushuang and his companions' arrival went unnoticed. At this moment, various emperors continued to arrive at the Grand Hall with the Grand Yen Immortals. Elder Ancestor, the emperor from the Great Dream Realm, has brought some of the Grand Yen Immortals here. A respectful emperor from the Great Dream Clan reported. Good. Bring these promising talents here first. Let the others figure out their own way to come. The distance from the Great Dream Realm isn't too far. If they can't even overcome this, there's no need for them to enter the Qishan Temple. The Great Dream Ancestor casually instructed. He himself had brought all the elite Grand Yen Immortals of the Great El Reem clan, among whom were several prodigies ranked in the top 1,000 of the Universe Deity Demon list. As for the other Grand Yen Immortals, he had assisted those he could. The rest was up to them. Inside the hall, the number of emperors kept increasing. Soon, there were over 1,000 emperors, and the Grand Yen Immortals numbered over 10 million. Most of the Grand Yen Immortals present were at the 9 Revolutions or perfected 9 Revolutions level. Only a few were at the 6 Revolutions. As for 3 Revolutions, there were none. Everyone, I believe almost all of you have arrived, said Qishui. He operated as a lone figure, devoid of a clan or influence. The unique life forms under his control within a certain mysterious realm were considered his subordinates. Each of these special life forms possessed a second-grade Tao. Their physical bodies were extremely robust, and their life levels were thousands of times greater than ordinary clans. However, their cultivation was much more challenging. Only a few dozen of them could become Grand Yen Immortals, and among them there were only 2 at the perfected 9 Revolutions level. A male and a female, these 2 special life forms stood behind Qishui. Their strengths both ranked within the top 1,000 of the Universe Deity Demon list. Combined with Qishui's lack of a clan or influence, any treasures that were not particularly useful to him were given to these 2 subordinates. They called themselves subordinates, but Qishui Wanderer always regarded them as his own children. Master, we're all here. Qishui, you can begin. I don't have many Yen Immortals under my command. This time I've brought them all, he said. The emperors spoke up, their eagerness palpable. After all the Yen Immortals had disappeared, Qishan Temple released a message, informing these emperors that the trial of was about to commence. As per the information, the trial had 3 steps. The first step was the great selection of Yen Immortals. Yen Immortals from across the universe had gathered in the affiliated worlds of Qishan Temple. They were the first batch to receive the inheritance, and the trial prepared for them by Qishan Temple was quite ruthless. Only 10% of the Yen Immortals in each affiliated world could survive. The top 1,000 would proceed to the next round of the trial. The rest would be sent back to their respective worlds, receiving the bestowal of the affiliated world source. What they received depended entirely on their ranking. This was the first step of the trial. The second step would be the selection for Grand Yen Immortals. The emperors would be the last. Crack. The ancient and tranquil Qishan Temple gradually opened its doors. Now that we're all here, let's go in. After understanding the structure of Qishan Temple fairly well, these emperors felt reassured and temporarily set aside their conflicts. The Grand Yen Immortal enters the first passage. The Emperor enters the second, echoed the voice of Qishui throughout the entire hall. In the midst of confusion, numerous Grand Yen Immortals hurriedly entered the Qishan Temple. As you enter the Qishan Temple, be vigilant. This is an unprecedented opportunity. Seize it and strive to achieve the status of an emperor. Encouraging words resounded. As they had said, this opportunity was unparalleled. If not cherished properly, one might regret it for a lifetime. Everyone answered in unison. Subsequently, they left the Qishui Hall, moved towards the void, and entered the Qishan Temple. Inside the Eternal Tower, Demon Lord Fengyu gazed fiercely at the outside world. Indeed, the passage for the Grand Yen Immortals opened first. It seems the Qishan Temple won't allow us in until the emperors from the other domains arrive, remarked Emperor Fengyu in a cold voice. This is normal. The Qishan Temple was constructed by the ancient civilization's mighty beings. It is a relic that sifts through potential inheritors. The Yen Immortals and Grand Yen Immortals are merely trying their luck. What is truly needed are powerful emperors like us, mused Jin Wuyang. Their speculations were correct. In the eyes of Oishan Temple, only individuals could enter. That's why they invited all the Yen Immortals into the temple. As for how many Grand Yen Immortals could come, Qishan Temple truly didn't care. In their view, there was no difference between Yen Immortals and Grand Yen Immortals. They were selecting the most outstanding among the exceptional, the paragons among paragons. As for their strength, it could be cultivated later. High comprehension and strong mastery of the Great Tao were enough for now. These abilities were cultivated through their own efforts. The Qishan Temple had an abundance of external resources. Moreover, this trial initiated by the Qishan Temple was the highest level of trial, and it required numerous inheritors. It seemed more like training a universal army corps within a structured framework. Each affiliated world selected 1,000 Grand Yen Immortals. Collectively, there were over 1 million of them. Training 1 million Grand Yen Immortals at once was not as simple as nurturing 1 or 2 inheritors. Go in, all of you. Demon Lord Fengyu opened the gates of the Eternal Tower. Inside the tower, all the Grand Yen Immortals bowed, shouting in unison, "Thank you, Emperor." Within the Eternal Tower and the tens of millions of Grand Yen Immortals inside the Qishui Hall, they all entered the Qishan Temple together. Ancestors, what about us? Zhou Yu and the others looked at the people entering the Qishan Temple one after another, feeling somewhat anxious. Don't worry. Entering first doesn't guarantee benefits. The authoritative voice of Chensho Buddha resonated. Tongtian Buddha and Wuliang Buddha were engaged in conversation with other emperors. As for Jian Wushuang, he was even less anxious. He had learned a lot about the Qishan Temple from others. Although he was intrigued, he understood what he needed. The Qishan Temple was undoubtedly mystical, but it might not necessarily help him. With this time, he might as well devour those ghosts and monsters. There were so many of them in the vast wilderness. Perhaps, while the emperors were focused on the Qishan Temple, he could achieve 9th transformation consummation in one fell swoop. Now, that was a tremendous opportunity. Tongtian, your people can also go in now. Qishui smiled. With so many Grand Yen Immortals, they naturally had to enter in batches. Although the Qishan Temple didn't prioritize order, these emperors still tried to ensure that their disciples entered first. The principle of first come, first served was deeply ingrained in them. Usually, the first entrants held the advantage in various relics and mysteries. Even though there was different this time, they still followed the old rules. Thank you, Alliance Leader. Tongtian Buddha's face was filled with a smile. Then he directly communicated with Chensho Buddha. Tongtian Buddha wasn't concerned about when his subordinates would enter. Right now, he was more concerned about himself. Since joining the Qishui Alliance, he had been rallying various forces. He had secretly formed alliances with several forces, especially with those solo practitioners. He personally pulled them in. As long as they had Tier 4 power, he had formed an alliance with almost all of them. Although the Qishui Alliance was currently in disarray, each member understood the concept of every man for himself in times of crisis. They had already begun planning for the aftermath of the Qishui Alliance's collapse. As for Wanderer Qishui, he turned a blind eye to these developments. Ever since he learned how to enter the Qishan Temple, he no longer cared about the fate of the Qishui alliance. He had greeted a few top-tier 4 emperors. He could form a new alliance within the Qishan Temple. He didn't care about the other strong individuals anymore. They couldn't assist him in any way. As a Tier 3 emperor, Qianxia Buddha, belonging to a different circle, was naturally unaware of what the Tongtian Buddha and the others were discussing. However, upon receiving the message, he quickly rallied everyone to prepare to enter the Qishan Temple. Jiuyu, you are the strongest among us, and we are of the same generation. You are our senior. Inside the Qishan Temple, please protect others as much as you can, Qianxia Buddha said, echoing Jiuyu's sentiments. His temperament was good, unlike other emperors who were often aloof and domineering. This was rare among Tier 3 emperors. Generally, Tier 3 emperors were the leaders of significant forces, and they weren't easy to talk to, especially the Tier 2 emperors who tended to be arrogant, particularly when their strength was weaker than others at the same tier. They liked to show off in front of the Grand Yen Immortal. Most of these emperors had reached the end of the road in terms of the Great Tao, with little hope of further strengthening their power. Their fundamental Great Tao before integrating with the source was weak, consisting of ordinary 4th grade or 5th grade Great Tao. Therefore, they felt intense jealousy towards the geniuses who possessed powerful sources. This jealousy was somewhat understandable. In fact, some dark-hearted emperors specifically hunted down the geniuses among the Grand Yen Immortals. Fortunately, there were many emperors present this time, so the evil emperors didn't dare to act recklessly. After all, the Grand Yen Immortals present were the elite geniuses of their respective worlds, and no one dared to incur their wrath at this moment. Thank you, Emperor. I will be careful. Jiuyu's eyes glinted with determination. Among his peers, he was a Tier 3 emperor, but he was still at the perfected 9 revolutions level. While it might seem like he wasn't in a hurry to integrate numerous Great Tao, in reality he was more anxious than anyone else. However, merging countless Great Tao into one was not an easy task. Until he reached the perfect source level, he couldn't integrate the Tao. Sure, go in. Qianxia Buddha waved his hand, and everyone was teleported out of the Qishui Temple. Jiuyu, I hope that when you return, you will have successfully integrated the Tao. In the void, Jiuyu turned around. He received a transmission from Qianxia Buddha, nodded, and silently said to himself, Definitely, Brother Qianxia. He couldn't forget the joyful expression on his friend's face when they successfully integrated the Tao together. On Tongtian Mountain back then, they were the geniuses of their generation. One succeeded in integrating the Tao, and the other struggled, delaying his integration. Depart! Jiuyu turned around, his eyes filled with madness, and he shouted sternly. Hundreds of people from the heaven-reaching Buddhist realm entered the Qishan Temple together. Jian Wushuang, not being a practitioner of the heaven-reaching Buddhist realm himself, followed at the end, walking parallel to Hu Qing. Before entering the Qishan Temple, Jian Wushuang felt a pair of enormous eyes watching him. He turned around and looked at the eternal tower floating in the void. A majestic figure appeared in his mind. It's Zhen Wuyang. Jian Wushuang hurried into the Qishan Temple. In the Qishui Hall, he had learned about the previous battle. Several emperors fell, including the ancestors of the Eastern Yen realm. There were also several emperors he had heard about, those powerful emperors from the ancient times in the Great Sea region. Just being glanced at by Zhen Wuyang, he felt chills down his spine. But he wasn't a traitor. He was never truly one of Zhen Wuyang's people. Zhen Wuyang withdrew his gaze, closed his eyes, and thought to himself, Good luck to you, young one. He managed to shift some of the 9 revolutions from the Great Sea region, but there weren't many with potential. Most of them would end up as cannon fodder. Jian Wushuang, however, proved to be a pleasant surprise to him. In a short span of time, he had broken through to the 6 revolutions of Grand Yen Immortal. He even had the ultimate Tao, placing him at the top 100 million on the Universe Deity Demon list. Being among the top 100 million at the 6 revolutions meant a lot. When he was at the pre-9 revolutions level, he could enter the top 1,000. Although he didn't fully comprehend the selection criteria of Grand Yen Immortals, Those within the top 1,000 were worth nurturing by the Qixin Temple. Perhaps, in the future, they could become a significant force to aid him. However, mastering the ultimate Tao was incredibly challenging. So far, there was only one ultimate emperor in the entire universe. He couldn't be certain that Jian Wushuang would succeed. Yet, as the sole practitioner of the ultimate Tao in the Great Sea region, he sincerely hoped that Jian Wushuang would successfully master it. Phew! Entering the Qixin Temple, Jian Wushuang finally breathed a sigh of relief. He had half expected Jin Wuyang to strike him down with a single blow. In the pitch-black darkness, Jian Wushuang couldn't discern where he was. What's this? He felt bewildered. Everything around him was pitch black, but when he looked up, he saw a sky filled with planets. An ancient aura enveloped him, and in the next moment, he vanished from his spot. Original planet, codename Alpha 9. Before Jian Wushuang could grasp what was happening, a deep voice echoed in his ears. With a burst of intense light, the darkness dissipated. He could now see his surroundings clearly. Looking around, he realized he was on a desolate planet. Barren mountain ranges, gray-white continents, and depleted lakes surrounded him. Only a small fraction of the people who had entered the Qixin Temple with him had been transferred to this original planet. He couldn't sense the presence of the others. In the Qixin Temple, there existed a hidden world. Jian Wushuang's figure flickered, appearing in the sky above the original planet. A barrier blocked his way. Through the barrier, he could see other original planets, 36 in total within this world. Brother Wushuang, the young Samanera, Hu Qing, flew over from a distance. The current Hu Qing was no longer the innocent and naive monk from before. The loose monk's robe he wore replaced his original tight-fitting attire. His fair face now carried a pair of sharp and fierce eyes. Seeing Hu Qing, Jian Wushuang nodded but didn't say much. The two landed on the ground, and other practitioners noticed them. However, due to mutual unfamiliarity, they kept a considerable distance, their guard up. Ding! A crisp sound resonated. Above the original planet, an elderly figure with a hunched back appeared. He carried a dark lamp and had a face full of wrinkles, with one white eye revolving in its socket. The Qixin Temple's ultimate trial begins now. The hunched old man's voice was hoarse. After uttering these words, he disappeared from this Alpha 9 original planet. Upon hearing this, the crowd first froze, then various eyes showed hints of murderous intent. After exchanging a glance with Hu Qing, Jian Wushuang swiftly rushed towards the nearest mountain range. The hunched old man had given them a piece of information. Once inside the mountains, the two of them finally let go of their guard. Simultaneously, the sky tilted, casting numerous beams of light. In each beam, there was a white token. The hunched old man had instructed everyone. Once they obtained their own token, they could unleash their killing intent. The original planet, a dull gray, was covered in mountains and barren lands, making it an easy target for attacks. Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing managed to meet, but no other factions were allowed to have a presence on this primitive planet. Once they formed a group, they would undoubtedly hunt down any solo travelers. That's why Jian Wushuang brought the young monk with him, quickly hiding in the mountains. They concealed their presence, intending to obtain a token first and understand the rules of the game. Even though the two of them possessed extraordinary strength, their rankings in the entire universe were not significant. Among the tens of millions of Grand Yen immortals entering the Qixin Temple this time, they were all top-notch experts, ranking within the top 100 million, with the lowest threshold being 9 revolution strength. And this was only 1/5 of the entire universe. It wouldn't take long for Grand Yen immortals from other worlds to arrive. After obtaining their identity tokens, the two of them moved again, arriving in a dim canyon. The entire canyon was barren, except for some scattered ancient tree branches and the corpses of some wild beasts. Hu Qing landed next to Jian Wushuang, looking at the corpses. He bowed his head and murmured, "Virtuous." Although these corpses seemed ancient and likely belonged to creatures that might have already gone extinct in the current original universe, they could sense that these corpses hadn't been dead for very long. The flesh and blood on them had been devoured by some kind of technique. Jian Wushuang waved his hand, carving out a simple cave. For the ultimate trial, it was likely that some powerful being forcibly created these primitive planets. All vitality was drained from these desolate creatures, withered lakes, and barren forests. Once lively planets were transformed into primitive planets. The Qixin Temple had truly lived up to its name, transforming a small world into a battlefield of demons. The two of them sat cross-legged in the cave. "Let's check the rules first," Jian Wushuang said casually. Since they were in the Qixin Temple, their primary goal was to survive. If they could gain some benefits along the way, that would be even better. Holding a white token, he infused a thread of yen power, and countless pieces of information flooded his mind. The ultimate trial of the Qixin Temple was divided into 5 domain realms. Each realm had 36 primitive planets, and each primitive planet housed millions of Grand Yen Immortals. 5 domain realms? Jian Wushuang was somewhat surprised. According to the Grand Yen Immortals in their eastern domain, 1 domain realm would have been sufficient. Now, there were 5 domain realms. This meant that most of the Grand Yen Immortals in the entire universe had entered the Qixin Temple. But wasn't the Qixin Temple located in the great desolate wilderness? No, something's off, Jian Wushuang realized. The Qixin Temple had probably appeared in other major worlds as well. No wonder the Qixin Temple's ultimate trial for the Grand Yen Immortals was progressing so quickly. Being divided into 5 domain realms meant they wouldn't encounter each other now, which wouldn't affect him at all. The selection criteria for Grand Yen Immortals had been significantly relaxed compared to the criteria for Yen Immortals. Yen Immortals were the top 1,000 within each world, but the requirements for Grand Yen Immortals trials were different. Each of the Grand Yen Immortals ranked within the top 10,000 in the original planets received blessings from the Qixin. The top 1,000 could inherit the essence contained within the original planets. Following that, a small-scale ranking appeared in their minds. The first, Lei Wanhe, a perfected 9 revolutions, had a record of 330. The second, Chong Lingxian%, a perfected 9 revolutions, had a record of 110. Ranking 769,358, Jian Wushuang had a record of 0. Records were divided. Identity token, 100 points. Perfected 9 revolutions, 1,000 points. 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal, 100 points. Note: killing opponents of higher realms earns 10 times the points. Trial duration, 30 years. Jian Wushuang suddenly opened his eyes. He had initially planned to hide here and wait for the trial to end before leaving. Now, it seemed he could gain some benefits. The Qixin Temple's trial placed great emphasis on surpassing one's own realm. Tempted by the allure of tenfold rewards, it forced those 9 revolutions to confront perfected 9 revolutions. However, perfected 9 revolutions didn't have the same tenfold rewards. They had to relentlessly hunt down 9 revolutions or kill opponents of the same realm. Under these rules, the entire original planet could truly become a battlefield of carnage. Brother Wushuang, Hu Qing put away his identity token, his gaze unexpectedly burning with fervor. Surround and kill the perfected 9s. Jian Wushuang's voice quivered. They both were 6 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals. If they could indeed surround and kill a perfected 9 revolutions, they would receive a 100-fold reward. Killing a perfected 9 revolutions equated to 1,000 points, so a 100-fold reward meant gaining 100,000 points. As long as they killed a few perfected 9 revolutions, the two of them would be at the forefront, waiting for the trials to end and reaping the benefits. Upon hearing his words, Hu Qing hesitated, as if 2 conflicting thoughts were battling in his mind. Eventually, he nodded. Virtuous. Jian Wushuang smiled. He could see that the novice monk Hu Qing had undergone significant changes, but everyone had their secrets, and he didn't pry. The two of them schemed, setting up a large formation in the valley. One of them would lure the perfected 9 revolutions into chasing them outside, and then they would ambush and kill them. As for the distribution of merits and points, Qixin Temple would handle that. The more effort one put in, the more points they would receive. At the same time, An unprecedented war erupted on the original planet. The ranking of this primitive planet kept changing as several perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals vied for some safety. For a while, no 9 revolution Grand Yen Immortal dared to show their face on any continent. These perfected 9 revolutions were already bloodthirsty. In the first year, almost all perfected 9 revolutions became targets. Fortunately, some lone perfected 9 revolutions planet banding together, barely managing to survive. However, there were also many powerful 9 revolution Grand Yen Immortals who could match the perfected 9 revolution ones. For example, Shuiwei, ranked in the top 1000, was a 9 revolution Grand Yen Immortal. In a major battle, he killed a severely injured perfected 9 revolutions and subsequently killed several other 9 revolution Grand Yen Immortals in succession. His rank soared, surpassing many perfected 9 revolutions. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. The great chaos inside the original planet ceased, and the rankings planet to solidify. Their struggles became exceptionally difficult. It was no longer just a matter of strength but also a battle of wits and bravery. Those who survived were not weaklings. They were either perfected 9 revolutions or true strong ones among the 9 revolution Grand Yen Immortals. During these 3 years, Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing finally set up a powerful formation. This formation was a simplified version of the Wuliang Great Formation from the Wuliang Mountain, designed by Hu Qing. Although it was a simplified version as a defensive formation for an emperor's Dao arena, even if it was just a fraction of its full power, it could trap the majority of perfected 9 revolutions. It's finally set up. It's perfect timing. Those perfected 9 revolutions have also accumulated a lot of achievements by now. We can begin, Jian Wushuang said, his eyes sharp. The trial had already passed 1/10 of its duration. The remaining time was neither too long nor too short. The weakened perfected 9 revolutions were all fallen, leaving only a few strong ones among them. If they intended to surround and kill one of these strong perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals, it would take them a considerable amount of time. After all, battles between the strong, lasting tens of thousands of years, were quite common. When the difference in strength wasn't significant, swiftly killing an opponent relied on grand formations or burning divine bodies. Hu Qing, I will lure them away while you hide in the grand formation. Remember, once I enter the formation, be careful when controlling it not to harm me. Jian Wushuang instructed earnestly. Even though this formation was a simplified version, it was still immensely powerful. Only by combining their strengths could they barely hold it. Hu Qing was the only one who could operate the formation, and controlling its power was challenging. Any misstep could backlash and harm both of them. Rest assured. Hu Qing's eyes were resolute as he nodded. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang's figure had already left the canyon. After a quick scan of the surroundings, he felt a fluctuation of yen power in the nearby mountains. Concealing his own yen power, he swiftly flew towards the source of the fluctuation. The original planet, though called a planet, was as large as some small domains. Even a perfected 9 revolutions would need a year to fly around it, and teleportation was impossible within the original planet. During his flight, Jian Wushuang observed the surroundings. The geological structure of the original planet, being a battleground for Grand Yen Immortals, was peculiar. The surface of the planet was exceptionally tough, making it difficult to destroy the mountains with ordinary means. However, after several large battles, many mountains were cut in half, and remnants of yen power still burned in the ruins, lingering endlessly. Jian Wushuang had also seen the road made of immortal bones. He could accept all of this since it was the Qishan Temple. To gain benefits here, one had to fight for them. Even in some cosmic mysteries, many Grand Yen Immortals would perish. But this time, the appearance of the Qishan Temple was a feast for the entire universe, albeit a feast of slaughter. After this encounter, it was anticipated that the formidable beings in the original universe would likely reduce by half. A decrease in numbers was advantageous for the cosmic source. It lightened the burden. Although their quantity dwindled, the quality increased several folds. Soon, it was expected that the original universe would truly rise within the long river of time, illuminating an entire era. On a fallen mountain range in the original planet, a sturdy middle-aged man with bare arms stood. holding a long spear in his hand. His face bore several scars, and his muscular upper body displayed numerous cracks, a testimony to irreparable injuries inflicted upon his divine body. He stood motionless amidst the ruins of the battlefield. The fluctuation emanated from him. Jian Wushuang's senses were keen. As he approached, he honed in on his target's location. Within the span of a tea ceremony, he arrived at this desolate battlefield. Jian Wushuang descended swiftly, his figure hovering 3 feet above the ground. He scanned the surroundings and fixed his gaze on the Grand Yen Immortal, Xianxia, whose aura was feeble. Ranked 9,867th in the original planet Alpha 9. Perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal Xianxia, Jian Wushuang muttered. Xianxia hailed from a small world, where he was the top expert and the ruler. However, he was merely a Tier 2 emperor in that world, the sole Tier 2 emperor therein. There weren't many 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals, and among them only 3 had reached the perfected 9 revolutions level. Xianxia was one of them. Solitude wasn't exclusive to the powerful. It afflicted the weak more. They lacked connections and influence. Once they entered the original planet, they were solitary warriors. Union seemed impossible. Xianxia's strength was ordinary among his peers, and without a backing, no alliance would accept him. Seeking alliance with other 9 revolutions beings was akin to volunteering for death. The perfected 9 revolutions had already formed an alliance, scouring the realms for weaker perfected 9 revolutions, attempting to trap and kill them. A formidable expert, a grandmaster in any major world, now found himself hunted across the battlefield like prey. Jian Wushuang clenched his identity token, holding over 30,000 points within it. My luck can't be this good. Just stepping out and I stumble upon a corpse. Jian Wushuang pinched the token of the fallen, acutely sensing the severe injuries it bore, clearly not feigned. Now that he had the identity token in his possession, even if he was in disguise, he wouldn't casually hang it around his waist. That distinct ripple, he could feel it even from millions of miles away. He simply didn't believe he would encounter such good fortune. So this was a very shoddy setup. Jian Wushuang tossed the token to the ground, swiftly retreating. In the instant he withdrew, concealed perfected 9 revolutions around him began to reveal themselves. 17 perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals appeared simultaneously around this battlefield. Indeed, just as Jian Wushuang had anticipated, this was a trap. If he could think of besieging weaker perfected 9 revolutions, others surely could too. After all, no one who came here was a fool. It was just that these people's trap was too poorly constructed. This happened to be his first venture outside. Other perfected 9 revolutions might have noticed something was amiss as they approached and left the area immediately. Big brother, this person's cultivation level seems a bit vague. He's probably not at the perfected 9 revolution stage, said a rough and burly man, his tiger-like eyes glaring, his stature comparable to 7 or 8 ordinary men combined. Jian Wushuang glanced sideways, finding himself blocked at the back by 7 Grand Yen Immortals emanating a murderous aura. In front, there were 3 perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals with the rest surrounding him on both sides. Although there was no grand formation, the way they positioned themselves indicated that if a perfected 9 revolutions fell into their trap, it would be challenging to escape. Those weaker in strength would likely meet their end here. Fellow Taoists, we're all at the perfected 9 revolution stage. Why must we make things difficult for each other? Jian Wushuang's aura fluctuated. His divine sword had long been shattered, and he didn't even have a supreme treasure on him anymore. Among these 17 individuals, there was a 2nd-grade origin Great Tao expert, while the weakest among them were 3rd-grade origin beings. Additionally, a few of them were exceptionally formidable even within the 3rd-grade origin category. The young man leading the group wore luxurious robes, and his triangular eyes exuded a cold indifference as he said lightly, "Kill him." In the past, encountering a perfected 9 revolutions might have led them to recruit the person, but now the strong were few and the weak were many. Once we kill this kid, let's change our location and head to the Flame Demon Valley. There are no more good catches here. The man with triangular eyes spoke with a sinister tone. He had caught quite a few formidable experts here, and his achievements were considerable. Everyone present was ranked within the top 20,000, with himself positioned within the top 10,000. All of this was thanks to that perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal. They had first besieged and severely injured him, then sealed him in this place, using him as bait to lure other Grand Yen Immortals. Due to this scheme, he had been elected as the leader by these people. There was a glint in Jian Wushuang's eyes. None of these individuals were weak. Dealing with all of them at once wouldn't be easy. More importantly, if they couldn't resolve the situation quickly and it attracted other powerful beings, things could turn dire. A couple of perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals approached. Even though he could resist against 1 or 2, if dozens of powerful beings came together, he couldn't guarantee he could hold them off until they entered the large formation he had prepared in advance. Everyone, if you insist on fighting. Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered as he scanned the approaching crowd, his figure suddenly flashing. Clang! The long spear held by the perfected 9 revolutions pierced out violently. A trail of afterimages followed Jian Wushuang as he mobilized his yen power, the momentum of his spear no less than that of the perfected 9 revolutions directly attacking the man with triangular eyes. Die! Catch the leader first, and the rest will follow. As soon as he moved, Jian Wushuang locked onto the leader with triangular eyes. The long spear pierced the air like a dragon. In that moment, Jian Wushuang appeared beside the man with triangular eyes. Before the others could react, the long spear had pierced through the man's chest. Meanwhile, Jian Wushuang appeared behind him, catching the blood-stained spear with one hand and smashing his fist towards the man's head with the other. Boom! All of this happened in an instant. Before the others could comprehend what was occurring, the man with triangular eyes had already fallen. Jian Wushuang held the blood-stained spear in one hand and the corpse of the man with triangular eyes in the other. A6 Revolutions Grand Yen Immortal has killed another perfected 9 Revolutions Grand Yen Immortal, earning 1,000 points. A message appeared in Jian Wushuang's mind. In addition to the basic points, Jian Wushuang also gained the accumulated points of the man with triangular eyes, which were more than 20,000. However, due to the higher level kill, even the accumulated points were multiplied by 10. Over 200,000 points. Jian Wushuang's eyes widened in astonishment. His ranking had instantly shot up into the top 5,000. This was terrifying beyond belief. He had thought only his basic achievements would double, never imagining that even his accumulated achievements would multiply. If he killed a perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal with an accumulated record of 100,000 battles, he would gain tens of millions in achievements. Tisk! Jian Wushuang had initially planned to kill their leader and leave, to avoid drawing attention. These perfected 9 revolutions were only worth 1,000 points each. It wasn't worth the risk. Now, it seemed he had no choice but to kill them. This exceeded his estimates. What he didn't know was that this was a special privilege unique to 6 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals, just not documented on their identity tokens. Go! The other perfected 9 revolutions sensed the danger and scattered in all directions. Jian Wushuang could kill their leader in an instant, and he could kill any one of them as well. Even if they ganged up on him, they would still suffer significant casualties. The risk was too high. It was better to escape directly. As for seeking revenge, that was practically impossible. If it weren't for the cunning of the man with triangular eyes, they wouldn't have pledged allegiance to him in the first place. It was a chance encounter, an alliance formed to engage in illicit activities. Now that the ship had sunk, they naturally abandoned it and fled in different directions. Since these people scattered, Jian Wushuang had no way to pursue them. He could only deal with those who were relatively close to him. Their achievements poured into his identity token with a clatter. Although the accumulated achievements of those few individuals were only a few thousand, multiplying it by 10 meant tens of thousands. Adding to the tally was the triangular-eyed man. This time, he had amassed a record of 350,000 points, placing him around the top 4. The distance to the previous 1,000 was still quite significant. Jian Wushuang pocketed his token, lowering his gaze to the perfected 9 revolutions sealed beneath him. After using your weapon, I'll leave your corpse intact. Jian Wushuang raised his hand, channeling a powerful yen power into his opponent's mind. Silent in his killing. Such was the might of yen power. Perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal Zhongshang has been killed. You have gained a record of 150,000 points. Seeing the displayed number, Jian Wushuang wasn't particularly surprised. He hadn't exerted much effort in slaying this perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal. Gaining 150,000 points was quite good considering. After stowing away his precious spear, he could already sense several grand and majestic auras soaring toward the sky, rushing in his direction. Although the commotion earlier hadn't been significant, it had still attracted the attention of the strong in the surrounding area. Let's go! Jian Wushuang flickered, swiftly disappearing into the sky. In just a few breaths, a perfected 9 revolutions arrived at the scene. He made no attempt to conceal his aura, his demeanor exuding dominance. Arrived late. Over a dozen 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals managed to escape. Their strength is commendable, probably at the peak of perfected 9 revolutions level. Behind the domineering man floated a crescent-shaped flying blade, emanating an incredibly powerful aura. Even his precious weapon was of the utmost quality. The power of a regular precious weapon generally sufficed for Yen Immortals up to the 9 revolutions level, but most top-tier precious weapons were wielded by perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals. For individuals as formidable as the perfected 9 revolutions, ordinary precious weapons were simply insufficient. Just like Jian Wushuang, his entire set of precious items was barely adequate during his Yen Immortal days. Once he ascended to the realm of Grand Yen Immortal and faced other 9 revolutions, even perfected 9 revolutions, these precious items fell short. Only transcendent innate treasures or those of a higher caliber could meet the current demand. In ordinary circumstances, Grand Yen Immortals would, at most, employ pinnacle innate treasures. However, with the opening of the Qixin Temple and major powers unlocking their treasuries, even the Emperor bestowed upon the immensely powerful perfected 9 revolutions, born from the source, a transcendent innate treasure. This treasure was a crescent-shaped blade adorning his back. Already at the peak of the 9th revolution, possessing this transcendent innate treasure elevated his strength to touch the threshold of supremacy. He could now rank among the top 1,000 on this primordial planet. Now, facing a perfected 9 revolutions daring to hunt him within his territory. His brows furrowed, a cold glint in his eyes. After a deafening explosion of air, he shot out, his form disappearing hundreds of thousands of miles in the blink of an eye. Jian Wushuang hadn't gone far yet. He wasn't in a rush. He had come precisely to lure a perfected 9 revolutions. If he fled too fast, the other party wouldn't be able to detect his aura. After a few more flickers, Jian Wushuang felt a stir in his heart. He took the bait. That overbearing aura permeated the entire mountain range. Though still quite distant, Jian Wushuang could feel it. The other party was heading straight for him. Oh no, he's too fast. Jian Wushuang's form suddenly accelerated. But it was already too late. The dominating aura, enveloping the entire mountain range, was right behind him. For a moment he felt a bit panicked. In a usual situation, he might not have been afraid of an ordinary perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal. But this pursuer, judging from his aura alone, was beyond the usual 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals he encountered. You can't escape, the formidable man behind Jian Wushuang roared, his crescent-shaped blade instantly surging forth, slashing towards Jian Wushuang. The two of them, one chasing and one fleeing, did not conceal their aura at all, drawing the attention of many powerful beings who approached. The overwhelming pressure made those who wanted to take advantage of the chaos retreat. A streak of light descended, and a man and a woman came to a halt. Senior brother, it's Luo Hao from the Daluo realm, the young woman from the Great Dream Clan, dressed in plain white robes, frowned. She was all too familiar with that terrifying aura. In the first few days of the trial, many of their clan members died at the hands of Luo Hao. If it weren't for senior brother risking his life to protect her and escape, she would have fallen in that battle as well. She was the direct disciple of the Tao ancestor of the Great Dream Realm, possessing a third-grade source Great Tao. In the Great Dream Realm, she was one of the top experts. However, after arriving in the original planet, her strength was reduced to the point where she was nearly at the bottom, vulnerable to anyone's whims. In the original planet, only those with a second-grade source Great Tao had the qualifications to hunt, while they could only flee. Now, quite a few weaker, perfected 9 revolutions had planet to conceal their presence, waiting for the trial to end. This trial was simply hell for them. Not to mention receiving the inheritance in the first 1,000 trials, even the first 10,000 were hard for them to enter. The perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals could rely on combined efforts to kill other perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals and gain a lot of achievements. They couldn't match those of the same level and could only hunt down lone perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals. This despicable person. I will kill him with my own hands sooner or later. Senior brother, should we take advantage of the chaos and go over? I see that the person he's chasing seems to be from the heaven-reaching Buddhist realm, quite powerful. They harbored deep resentment, their hatred itching at them. Although Luo Hao was strong, his ranking in the entire universe was not high. The first prince of the Great Dream Realm was a peerless genius who could make it into the top 1,000. Unfortunately, they had bad luck and didn't end up on an original planet. Luck seemed to favor Luo Hao, one of the top powerhouses on this original planet. Several other formidable figures on this planet belonged to Luo Hao's faction. They had communicated beforehand, explaining Luo Hao's audacious and unrestrained actions. Senior sister, I must face this alone. I can't risk your safety any further, the man said, his eyes softening. Though the Greater Dream Realm was merely a middle-tier world, its prodigies possessed immense pride, a trait influenced by their progenitor, the Great Dream Ancestor. Their influence spanned dozens of worlds in the vicinity. Avenging their grievances shouldn't endanger his senior sister. If news spread that she was involved, it would be better if he were dead. Senior brother, I'm going with you, the young girl from the Greater Dream Realm asserted, her spirit unyielding. Our realm is one of the strongest in the entire universe. If not for our ill fate, being assigned to this original planet, we wouldn't have been bullied by that Luo Hao. Unable to persuade his determined senior sister, the man stopped trying. Instead, he affectionately patted her head and whispered, "All right, for the honor of the Greater Dream Realm, let's do it." They exchanged a determined glance before their figures blurred, heading toward the oppressive aura. However, they moved discreetly, neither too fast nor too conspicuous, their presence completely concealed. They understood that facing Luo Hao head-on was futile. Their only chance lay in ambushing him during his battle. Daluo Realm. Jian Wushuang fled rapidly, recalling information about various powerful beings listed in the Universe Deity Demon list. The Daluo Realm, one of the 10 princes, Luo Hao, ranked among the top 100,000 experts in the universe. Jian Wushuang had glimpsed his name on the list once. In the realm of perfected 9 revolutions, the top expert wielded a crescent-shaped flying blade that appeared to be a primordial treasure. Possessing such a treasure, combined with his innate strength, Luo Hao was undoubtedly among the top 1,000 experts on this original planet. This primal world boasted millions of Grand Yen Immortals, and Luo Hao's strength easily ranked within the top 1,000. It might even have been higher. However, at this moment, he didn't have the time to check his identity token's ranking. The spinning crescent-shaped flying blade was dangerously close, and in an instant, blood and flesh splattered. I underestimated him. Jian Wushuang's yen power surged, swiftly healing the ferocious wounds on his back. In his heart, he thought, I shouldn't underestimate the top expert in the perfected 9 revolutions experts. He must not be underestimated. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang possessed a robust yen power within him, comparable to that of a perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal. Furthermore, his source was incredibly potent. Combined with the baptism of golden sands, his divine body was even more robust than an ordinary perfected 9 revolutions. As long as he avoided direct confrontation, he could escape from Luo Hao's grasp. His current dilemma was that he needed to escape while also luring Luo Hao into the Grand Formation. This was the real challenge. If he distanced himself too much, Luo Hao might give up the chase. If he got too close, it would be too dangerous. The blood blade from earlier could sever his divine body even across 1,000,000 miles. If he got any closer, it could damage his source. At this point, he didn't fully understand Luo Hao. If he had known about Luo Hao's extremely domineering behavior, he wouldn't have been so conflicted. He didn't even need to provoke Luo Hao completely. Luo Hao, is this all you're capable of? Coming all this way just to scratch me from 1,000,000 miles away? Jian Wushuang's figure flickered abruptly, the distance between them widening significantly. He deliberately slowed down, tempting Luo Hao, afraid the opponent might suddenly stop chasing. This was his first prey. He couldn't give up so easily. He had figured it out. Most of the mountains now harbored only the weak, hiding and waiting for the trial to end. The truly powerful had gone to the continents on the original planet. That was the real battlefield where strong fighters fell every day. Luo Hao was fast, trailing behind. When he heard Jian Wushuang's taunt, he hesitated for a moment. There was no anger on his face. Instead, there was a hint of confusion. Was he deliberately mocking him? Either he didn't know Luo Hao's true strength, or he wasn't afraid of him. Jian Wushuang knew his name. He must know his capabilities. Ranked among the top 100,000 in the entire universe, one of the 10 great princes of the high-grade world, he was a top-tier expert who had mastered the second-grade source Grand Dao. His Grand Dao was already perfected, ready to merge at any time. If the Qixin Temple suddenly emerged, he would have to close himself off and prepare for the merging. Jian Wushuang was indeed fast, surpassing Luo Hao by a significant margin for now. But Luo Hao didn't believe that someone would be so reckless just based on speed. "I'd like to see what cards you have up your sleeve," Luo Hao sneered. In this mountain range, he was the only top-tier expert. Even if all the perfected 9 revolutions in the mountains joined forces, they wouldn't pose a threat to him. As for the possibility of other top-tier experts ambushing him, he wasn't concerned at all. His few good friends, along with the other princes of the Daluo realm, exchanged various information at all times. He was well aware of the positions of the top 1,000 experts on the original planet. They were certainly not in this mountain range. Boom! Luo Hao's speed suddenly increased, his body clad in dazzling black armor, emitting a black light that made him even faster. In the top 1,000, his strength was at the bottom. He didn't have the courage to compete on the mainland, so he could only hunt down some ordinary perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals in the mountains to maintain his ranking. Although this adventure was risky, it was still within his control. If he didn't take a chance, it would be hard to maintain his position in the top 1,000. If he hadn't come back empty-handed this time, he would have made up his mind to compete on the mainland. The top 1,000 had the bestowal of the Qixin, allowing them to comprehend the Qixin Great Dao. This was a tremendous help to him on his path. Even though he was on the edge of merging with the Dao, he had no clue whatsoever. To succeed, he could only rely on gambling. Instead of gambling during the Dao fusion, it was better to go crazy in the Qixin Temple. At least in the top 1,000 of the original universe, he had the strength to hold his ground. A black shining figure tore through the sky, heading straight for Jian Wushuang. If it were outside, such speed would have already torn through the void. But on the original universe, the space was incredibly stable, even stronger than some Patriarch's Dao arenas. If it were any weaker, after a few major battles, the original universe would have been shattered. Jian Wushuang's eyes shifted until a visible black shining figure came through the air. Then he started fleeing. It looks like he took the bait. At this moment, the gorge where the formation had been set in advance was getting closer and closer. It would only take the time for an incense stick to burn to reach it. Buzz! A ripple in the void gradually emerged. Under a certain mountain peak, a young man with a tall crown and dressed in imperial robes slowly walked out of a cave. His eyes emitted a golden light, making him incredibly noble. "Finally, my divine body is restored. Although it cost me half of my treasures, it was worth it." The man with the high crown casually took out his identity token. His name, which was originally ranked 97th, after a few fluctuations, settled at rank 562. Hiding for a year, and I've dropped to the 500 range. It's truly intense. With a flicker of his figure, he left the mountains. This wasn't his battlefield. Now that his strength had recovered, he needed to go to the main battlefield on the continent. That's where he could earn real achievements. Killing a 1000 expert would yield a substantial amount of credit. Of course, the danger was commensurate, but true experts never feared danger. The man in the emperor's robe sneered slightly. His eyes, piercing through the void, spotted Jian Wushuang charging straight at him. This was unexpected. He had just restored his divine body, and as soon as he stepped out, he encountered a fat opportunity. It seemed the opponent's strength was not weak. He slightly retreated, striking out with a fist toward Jian Wushuang. A tremendous fist shadow erupted, sweeping across countless mountains. For a moment, boulders tumbled down in succession. In the depths of the ravine, Hu Qing abruptly opened his eyes. The immense aura caused ripples in the array formations. Wushuang, you're pushing yourself too hard. He sighed and stabilized the formations again, calmly awaiting the upcoming fierce battle. However, he didn't know that the aura had already exceeded Jian Wushuang's control. Almost there, we're about to reach. Jian Wushuang breathed a sigh of relief. The gorge was in sight. With the large array there and his collaboration with Hu Qing, they had no fear of the prince Luo Hao. What's going on here? Without waiting for Jian Wushuang to see clearly what was happening in front of him, a massive fist shadow crashed into his body. Boom! The deliberately charged punch, a supreme technique of an emperor, belonged to a young man with an incredibly powerful background. While he wasn't a prince of any specific power, he was a son of a powerful emperor. In this world, he wasn't just a prince. He was an emperor. His father had even allocated him 30% of the territory to govern. This territory encompassed 1/3 of a high-grade world, larger than even a middle-grade world. Within his sphere of influence, even emperors respectfully called him Your Majesty, the God Emperor. But in this primitive planet where strength surpassed background, even though his father was a ruler, he had almost been killed on the spot. Only by sacrificing a transcendent innate treasure did he manage to escape death. Jian Wushuang was sent flying millions of miles backward by the force of the punch, even passing by the pursuing Luo Hao. What does this mean? Luo Hao was puzzled. No matter how audacious the other party was, he hadn't expected them to be audacious enough to fly past him and mock him. But before he could erupt in anger, he felt a powerful aura approaching, tearing through the air. He's not dead. The Emperor Youth, after glancing at Jian Wushuang, turned his gaze toward Luo Hao. His voice trembled as he said, "A kid from the Daluo realm. Very good indeed." At this moment, he no longer cared about Jian Wushuang, who had been sent flying by a single punch. Instead, he looked at Luo Hao with great interest. In the main continent, he had been severely injured and nearly killed. The son of the Daluo realm had even taken the opportunity to ambush him. He remembered the background of the other party, originating from a high-grade world in the Daluo realm, not inferior to their Tianxia realm. Luo Hao also realized what was happening, but it was already too late to escape. He couldn't fathom how such a powerful being had appeared in this place. "You are God Emperor Mo Long." Luo Hao's battle spirit was high, even though he knew the opponent was a peak powerhouse, the son of an emperor, and possessed various treasures. "Kid, today you will die. Blame it on the other princes of your Daluo realm," God Emperor Mo Long said coldly. If it weren't for that prince of the Daluo realm ambushing him, he wouldn't have been so severely injured. Now, just the rapid recovery of his divine body had cost him half of his treasures. His countless years of accumulation, combined with the various treasures bestowed upon him by his father, made his total worth comparable to some Tier 3 emperors. It took half the treasures of a Tier 3 emperor just to restore his divine body. One could imagine how severe his injuries were. He had almost fallen into a deep slumber. If he hadn't used treasures to repair his divine body, relying solely on cultivation to recover would have taken several chaos cycles. With a single mishap, his divine body might have collapsed and he would have perished. Now, after a year, he had restored his peak divine body. One could imagine how many treasures he had spent. He would definitely settle this account. If he didn't make it into the top 10 this time, his trip here would be considered a loss. Even if he made it into the top 10, the treasures bestowed by the Qixin Temple wouldn't be too many. Understanding the usefulness of the Qixin Great Tao for him was more significant. It was all because of that prince from the Daluo realm. At a critical moment, he ambushed him. In the chaotic battle of peak powerhouses, it was like a group of hungry beasts fighting each other. Whoever weakened first became the prey. Only by maintaining peak combat power could one have dominance. Once someone's aura weakened, other powerhouses were like sharks smelling blood, instantly pouncing on their prey. God Emperor Mo Long, well aware of this, blamed everything on that prince from the Daluo realm. Now, just as he had restored his strength, he encountered Luo Hao, one of the 10 princes of the Daluo realm. Although he had no personal grudge against him, he didn't mind taking care of this top-tier expert among the perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals as a form of revenge. While recovering his divine body in seclusion, he had specifically investigated the strong figures in the Daluo realm on this original primitive planet. 6 out of the 10 princes were on this primitive planet, a rare occurrence. Among them, 2 possessed peak strength, while the remaining 4 were top-tier experts. In a one-on-one battle, God Emperor Mo Long was fully confident in defeating them one by one. Prince Luo Hao. He was the first target. God Emperor Mo Long's aura erupted, his fist striking towards Luo Hao, a punch 10 times stronger than the one he had used against Jian Wushuang moments ago. Emperor's fall, he roared, instantly appearing in front of Luo Hao. Boom! 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 Their fight made the entire mountain range boil. Although Luo Hao was slightly weaker in power, he possessed innate treasures, coupled with peak-grade armor, enough to bridge some of the gap. But he forgot the fact that his opponent was the son of an emperor. In just an instant, they exchanged blows hundreds of times. Golden fist shadows smashed against peak-grade armor, producing crackling sounds. I'll shatter that turtle shell of yours. God Emperor Mo Long's hands transformed into golden dragon claws, surging with power, striking at Luo Hao once again. The immense force made Luo Hao's heart tremble. This is bad. He had no room to retreat. A crescent-shaped flying blade appeared in his hand, swinging with all his might toward God Emperor Mo Long's head. Using one move to counter another, placing oneself in a desperate situation for a chance of survival. Spectacular. It's truly spectacular. 2 members of the Great Dream Clan hiding on a distant mountain peak watched, their blood boiling. They hadn't anticipated the sudden appearance of God Emperor Mo Long, who directly overwhelmed Luo Hao with a barrage of punches. There was even hope of slaying Luo Hao. Senior brother, am I unable to take revenge myself? Murmured the young woman from the Great Dream Clan. Fear not, junior sister. I've heard of God Emperor Mo Long. His father once visited our Great Dream Realm, seeking assistance from our ancestor, said the man from the Great Dream Realm, his face tinged with pride. Once the situation stabilizes, one will personally go and talk to him. Out of respect for our ancestor, we'll handle Luo Hao ourselves. Confidence filled the man's face. In their eyes, no one could disrespect the Great Dream Realm, except for those petty individuals from the Daluo realm. In their view, the Great Dream Realm was one of the core powers in the entire universe. Thousands of miles away, Jian Wushuang's body was embedded in a mountain peak. His body had crashed through several peaks before finally landing in a pile of rocks within a mountain. Puff! His body trembled, and a mouthful of scalding golden blood sprayed from his mouth. Took him a moment to recover. The echoes of explosions in the sky reverberated in his mind. God Emperor Mo Long. Jian Wushuang cursed under his breath. Peak experts who could injure his divine body with just one punch were truly unfortunate encounters. He was in deep trouble this time. A single punch had left him dazed. Fortunately, due to his strong mental state, he recovered within a breath and emerged from the chaotic rubble. He happened to see Luo Hao, who was currently engaged in battle with God Emperor Mo Long. It's not entirely hopeless yet, but it's a pity. They're just a step away. If only these two could fight within his grand formation. Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered. He could escape now, but if he did, this trip would be in vain. Although he had gained nearly 400,000 battle achievements, he was still far from the top 1,000. Little novice monk Hu Qing was still waiting naively within the grand formation. If he gave up now, where could he go to attract perfected 9 revolutions experts? There were too few perfected 9 revolutions in these mountains, and the mainland was too dangerous. There was simply no opportunity to set up a grand formation. In the pursuit of wealth and danger, Jian Wushuang's sharp mind conceived a bold idea. What if he could lure the top 1,000 superpowers into the grand array and then wait until both sides were injured? It wasn't entirely impossible. At the moment, God Emperor Mo Long held the absolute advantage on the battlefield, already causing injuries to Luo Hao, who possessed peak-grade battle armor. If Jian Wushuang could distract God Emperor Mo Long from a distance and lead Luo Hao into the formation, he could ensnare God Emperor Mo Long as well. The plan was viable but tremendously difficult. Firstly, it depended on whether Luo Hao would believe him. Before the situation became a matter of life and death, it was hard for Luo Hao to trust his words, especially since Jian Wushuang had led Luo Hao here, coincidentally encountering God Emperor Mo Long. Someone unaware might think Jian Wushuang had intentionally led Luo Hao here, allowing God Emperor Mo Long to deal with him. God Emperor Mo Long was incredibly powerful, and his methods were even more extreme than Luo Hao's. Both were domineering figures. If he appeared and the two of them teamed up, it was entirely possible for them to kill Jian Wushuang. Wait, Jian Wushuang decided. He would wait until Luo Hao couldn't hold on any longer, needing reinforcements, and then he would strike. Yes, that's it. Jian Wushuang's figure flickered a few times, disappearing into the void millions of miles away from their battle. He concealed himself and communicated with Hu Qing, preparing to face the enemy at any moment. Inside the canyon's grand array, after receiving Jian Wushuang's message, Hu Qing replied with a simple "understood." His aura imperceptibly grew stronger. This wasn't strength cultivated through practice. It was a reviving force. In his mind, 2 sets of memories intertwined. Hu Qing understood his true nature. Although the consciousness in his mind was incredibly powerful, he slowly devoured it bit by bit. I have only one purpose: to suppress all evil thoughts. Hu Qing's delicate face carried a hint of ruthlessness. Scenes of black evil thoughts invading him played out in his eyes. The battle of the 2 consciousnesses was surprisingly no weaker than the struggles of the top external experts. In the midst of a brutal hand-to-hand combat, where flesh met flesh, and amidst the clash of mortal and celestial forces, the tranquility of the mountains was shattered. Bang! Once again, Luo Hao was smashed to the ground by a powerful punch, reducing the towering mountain that once stood there to nothing but a leveled plain. In the sky above, the dragon claw gauntlet of the God Emperor Mo Long was stained with crimson blood, dripping from its razor-sharp edges. Look at this, it's a piece of your own flesh, Mo Long sneered, shaking off the nauseating chunks of flesh in his hand. Splat! Luo Hao managed to pull his body from the sunken earth, clutching his chest. Even his peak-grade supreme armor had shattered. Normally, it was incredibly difficult to damage such peak-grade supreme armor under an emperor's level. Even with the help of innate treasures, it was a daunting task to destroy armor of this caliber. However, the strength of the God Emperor Mo Long was overwhelming. A perfected 9 revolutions, he possessed multiple innate treasures. The mysterious artifact at his brow, in particular, wielded the power of a top-grade innate treasure. Even emperor-level experts envied this mysterious item, which had been bestowed upon him by his father during the last opening of the Qishan Temple. The last time he almost fell, he hadn't even been willing to use it. Before entering the Qishan Temple, his father had warned him that this artifact was difficult to control. It wasn't a treasure born within the universe, but an ancient relic that had drifted through the river of time and space, passed down from ancient times. The ancient artifact he possessed was merely a component of an ancient treasure. It had the ability to amplify his divine power. Once activated, it could make his divine power more than 10 times stronger. However, controlling it was extremely difficult, making it unsuitable for chaotic battles. It could be used effectively in one-on-one combat without distractions. That's why God Emperor Mo Lone hadn't used this artifact in their previous encounter. He was confident that he could eliminate all the Emperor's children of the Daluo realm in one-on-one combat. Breathing heavily, Luo Hao clutched his chest. No, I must hold on. The message has been sent out, but it will take time for the strong members of the clan to arrive. I can't fall here, he thought, his determination fierce. He couldn't accept defeat. He had carefully planned this mountain range, turning it into his hunting ground. He had good relations with other peak experts. He had a great hope to maintain his position in the top 1,000 and receive the divine gift from the Qixin Temple to comprehend the Qixin Great Tao. He couldn't fall here. For his clan, for himself, he couldn't fall. He was the proudest Grand Yen Immortal of the Gukka clan. He couldn't fall. I am Gukka Luo Hao. He raised his head, his eyes wide with determination. L will not be defeated by you. Boom! His previously weak aura skyrocketed again, surpassing even the mighty aura he had at his peak, piercing the sky. A majestic column of energy shot straight into the clouds. His strength surged, fragmentary bolts of lightning covering his body, flickering with the power of thunder. Although his aura surged, he didn't rush to attack. He could buy some time. If he struck now, he wouldn't be able to hold on until the strong members of the clan came to his aid. What's this? Burning the source of the Great Tao already? Mocked God Emperor Mo Long. Not bad. This supreme technique can convert the burning source into triple divine power. It can be considered a top-notch supreme technique. It's one of the best among the intermediate supreme techniques. God Emperor Mo Long shook his head. If you think this can match my strength, then you're underestimating me. The perfected 9 revolutions were stratified, their strengths varying widely, dependent on the power of their source Tao. Among the 5th grade source Tao, perfected 9 revolutions were considered commonplace. Even with peak treasures, they could only stand out moderately in this category. 4th grade source Tao Grand Yen Immortals, relying on peak treasures, could touch the threshold of top-level Grand Yen Immortals with their exceptional cultivation. Only those perfected 9 revolutions with 3rd grade Tao could be deemed top-tier experts. With peak treasures, they stood at the pinnacle among perfected 9 revolutions. 2nd grade source Tao experts, after completing their cultivation, generally touched the peak threshold. Take Luo Hao, for example. He practiced 2nd grade source Tao, reaching the peak threshold with his cultivation, albeit his treasures weren't sufficient. If he possessed half the treasures of God Emperor Mo Long, he would have the battle prowess of a peak Grand Yen Immortal. God Emperor Mo Long's Tao wasn't top tier among 2nd grade Tao, but it wasn't the worst either. With abundant treasures, he was the most outstanding among peak experts, just below extreme Grand Yen Immortals like Jiuyu, capable of slaughtering hundreds of perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals single-handedly. To accurately categorize, there were stages of initial, ordinary, top-grade, peak, extreme, and half-step emperor. Half-step emperors, experts at this level, were almost always using ultimate Tao, either peerless geniuses who comprehended the fusion of myriad Taos or cultivators of the ultimate Tao. There were very few of them in the entire universe, and as far as the current situation was concerned, not a single one existed on this primitive planet. In the fivefold world, each world had 36 primitive planets, totaling 180 planets. With a bit of luck, one wouldn't encounter such monsters. If luck turned sour, escape was the only option. Every primitive or original planet was a slaughterhouse for that half-step emperors. Undoubtedly, such powerhouses occupied the throne of first place in this regard. As long as the Qixin Temple operated smoothly, the 2 half-step emperors would never clash. Ultimately, the Qixin Temple was here to sift through strong beings. Those like them, ordinary Grand Yen Immortals on the path of the original Great Tao, were unlikely to be chosen. In the end, those who truly stood out were the ultimate existences or geniuses who comprehended the unity of myriad Taos. God Emperor Mo Long looked down upon Luo Hao with disdain. A lowly creature dares to challenge me. Boom! Instantly, the two ascended to the sky, and every move they made resonated with a dull sound. God Emperor Mo Long's every move was precise, targeting non-vital points, only disturbing Luo Hao's veins. The divine power he could burn with his source was limited after all. Luo Hao was anxious, but not at all hurried. He knew why the opponent was resisting like this, waiting for the other strong beings of the Daluo realm. These strong beings in the Daluo realm were also incredibly fortunate. 6 out of the 10 emperor's descendants had descended upon the original planet Alpha 9. They complemented each other quite well. In his eyes, Luo Hao had been guarding this mountain range. 8 chances out of 10, he was here on the orders of the first prince of the Daluo realm. If injured, he could hide here, recover his divine body, and consider Luo Hao as a retreat. The fact that Luo Hao was left with the back door clearly showed that the other descendants had great trust in him. If he called for help now, those other descendants would undoubtedly come to his aid. He could play his cards right, first severely injure Luo Hao, then expose a weakness, waiting for the princes of Daluo realm to arrive. Then, one by one, he would eliminate them. Even if they came together, he was willing to use his secret treasures, enough to kill 1 or 2 and still escape unharmed. This way, he would both avenge his grievances and accumulate significant military merits. In this mountainous battleground, there was no need to worry about old enemies sneaking up on him. The princes of Daluo realm wouldn't be foolish enough to expose their home base, luring other strong opponents to deal with him. His displayed strength was not far behind Daluo realm's chief. Plus, feigning unhealed injuries, they would surely relax their guard. If he got a chance to kill Daluo realm's chief, it would be a huge victory. The current chief of Daluo realm was ranked 76th, with a combat record easily in the tens of millions. Ha! Luo Hao gripped a spinning flying blade in one hand, blocking the heavy punches of God Emperor Mo Long. In his other hand appeared a black rhombus-shaped crystal pillar. He was never good at close combat. His enlightenment was the great Tao of gold. His divine body wasn't exceptionally strong. Unlike God Emperor Mo Long, who had an emperor as his father, even if he didn't focus on strengthening his physical body, he could still spend a considerable amount of treasures to refine his body to perfection. Combined with the Tao of the mountain, his strength was terrifying, his defense akin to a towering divine mountain, and his speed needless to say. Mastering the Tao of the mountain, he could shrink space and escape without a trace. God Emperor Mo Long's strength could be described as reaching perfection. This was the advantage of a strong background. Without such support, just having a perfect physical body would require all the assets of an ordinary emperor. Where could one find the resources and treasures for a perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal? Luo Hao had his own background, although powerful. He was just one of the top 10 princes of his generation. If he couldn't successfully merge the Daos within the time limit or lacked the strength to do so, he would be sent to a distant place, losing access to resources and training. He would find it nearly impossible to merge the Daos successfully throughout his lifetime. Therefore, he had no choice but to gamble. Before entering the Qixin Temple, in addition to the transcendent innate treasure bestowed by the Emperor, he had exchanged an Emperor-grade destruction god crystal, a relic of the Emperor's own destruction, with all his accumulated wealth. This Emperor-grade destruction god crystal was crafted by a formidable expert who had achieved Emperor status through the path of destruction. Though it was merely a first-grade god crystal, it possessed 3/10 of an Emperor's power. Once detonated, it could easily kill a perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal, severely injure a peak powerhouse, and even pose a threat to an inattentive peak expert. This was his ultimate trump card, and revealing it now meant he truly had reached a dead end. Mo Long, stop pretending. I know that you were severely injured the last round. I suspect you haven't fully recovered your strength yet. Luo Hao raised the destruction god crystal high, continuing, "This is an Emperor-grade destruction god crystal. If you don't cease, I will detonate it, and we will all die together. Even if you can withstand the explosion, your divine body will be on the brink of collapse, disqualifying you from competing for the top 10 spots." He had long sensed that God Emperor Mo Long was not at his best. A deduction based on intelligence gathered a year ago. God Emperor Mo Long was likely operating at only 80% of his full strength. currently secluded for recovery. This sudden emergence was probably due to Jian Wushuang's influence. Thinking this, Luo Hao clenched his teeth. He almost forgot about Jian Wushuang. If not for that young man, he wouldn't have ended up in this dire situation. He was now facing the risk of falling. However, he didn't have time to worry about Jian Wushuang now. He needed to deal with the immediate threat. As long as he survived this ordeal, even if he had to turn the mountains upside down, he would find Jian Wushuang and obliterate him completely. Even if they escaped the Qixin temple, he wouldn't let Jian Wushuang off the hook. Thinking about the legendary Grand Yen Immortal, Dao Lord Jiuyu, in the heaven-reaching Buddhist realm sent shivers down his spine. Anyone who became a Dao Lord was not to be trifled with. An emperor represented the success of combining Daos, and a Dao Lord represented the immense power of the original source, reaching a limit comparable to an emperor. Only those who could rival emperors earned the title of Dao Lord. Those at the peak or half-step Dao Lord level were beyond their reach. Especially in the absence of an emperor, these individuals were the strongest entities. Even the mighty God Emperor Mo Long didn't dare provoke a Dao Lord. Despite his formidable background, if faced with absolute power, even his most potent treasures could be easily neutralized. For instance, high-grade destruction God crystals. An emperor-grade destruction God crystal. God Emperor Mo Long sneered, saying, "How foolish! Even if you detonate it, even if I die with you, do you dare?" In his view, if destruction God crystals were useful, he would simply buy 100 of them. If he encountered someone stronger, he could throw one out, rendering him invincible. These emperor-grade destruction God crystals only caused physical damage. Having a peak treasure armor was enough to withstand 99% of their destructive power. The remaining fraction could be neutralized by inner armor. Killing a peak Grand Yen Immortal was difficult, let alone a top-grade perfected 9 revolutions. At most, these crystals could intimidate the poor souls who couldn't afford peak treasures, a feeble attempt to frighten them. It was utterly laughable. "You fool!" God Emperor Mo Long mocked his opponent mercilessly, gradually eroding Luo Hao's mental defenses, causing him to collapse completely. "Fine, if that's the case, then let's all die together." Luo Hao, for the first time, activated the Destruction God Crystal. He had only heard of this kind of prohibited grade disposable treasure before. He knew it might not kill his opponent, but he didn't expect God Emperor Mo Long to be so unbothered. God Emperor Mo Long's eyes narrowed. Whoosh! A thread of yen power seeped into the interior of the Destruction God Crystal. Then it was thrown fiercely at Mo Long. The black shining battle armor instantly enveloped Luo Hao, and he quickly retreated. "This madman really dares to use it," God Emperor Mo Long chuckled. To prevent himself from being blown up by the Destruction God Crystal, he had to take out a suppressive type of innate treasure, directly suppressing the Destruction God Crystal in a cyan bamboo building. Transcendence innate top-grade treasure. Suppressing Jade Pavilion. Buzz. A muffled sound, and the Destruction God Crystal detonated within the suppressing Jade Pavilion. "Is that it?" Jian Wushuang was stunned. He lowered his hands from covering his head, put away his only high-grade treasure shield, and let out a sigh of relief. Luo Hao's trump card. Jian Wushuang shook his head. In his heart he thought, "I can't delay anymore. Luo Hao's state of mind has changed. If I don't help, he might really end up dead here." From a distance, he could tell that God Emperor Mo Long had been toying with Luo Hao all along. Although he didn't know the depth of their enmity, judging from the situation, it seemed that God Emperor Mo Long was preparing to play Luo Hao to death. His form halted. He had just intended to move, but he realized that someone had beaten him to it. A man and a woman, both wearing colorful robes, their backs adorned with dreamlike feathers unique to the great dream realm. "Brother Mo Long, I have brought the 6th generation chief Taoist of the great dream realm. Could you please give me face and hand over this person to me?" The woman spoke, her voice firm. Before God Emperor Mo Long could react, Luo Hao, who had blocked his path, burst into laughter. "Ha ha!" Luo Hao laughed arrogantly, dispelling his earlier frustration. He sneered. I don't regret dying at all. With you two fools accompanying me, the journey won't be lonely. You despicable scoundrel. How dare you speak so arrogantly in this situation? The Great Dream Clan girl shouted angrily, her hands gripping a precious red long knife. God Emperor Mo Long stood still for a long time before he finally comprehended the situation. Are you people from the Great Dream Clan? He asked. They nodded in affirmation. Now, while you haven't provoked my wrath, get lost. God Emperor Mo Long's mind swiftly searched for information about the powerful beings in the Great Dream Realm. Then he shouted in anger. Get out of here right now. The Great Dream Realm was just a medium-grade world. The strength of the Great Dream Dao ancestor alone was formidable enough to rank among the top 100 in the entire universe. His father indeed had some connections with the Great Dream Dao ancestor, but Mo Long considered those connections as mere acquaintanceships. Even if he had those connections, so what? The entire Eastern Domain, strictly speaking, was dominated by just two major forces, the Qishui Hall and the Eternal Tower. Did they mean to imply that he could only kill powerful beings from the Eternal Tower based on this? It was ridiculous. This alliance was temporary at best. When they entered the Qishan Temple, no one cared about alliances unless they were from the same clan or world. Moreover, a Grand Yen Immortal who hadn't reached the perfected 9 revolutions level dared to come and demand respect at this moment. He didn't know what to do. Even peak-level experts wouldn't dare to demand respect at this moment, let alone someone who was just a Grand Yen Immortal on the edge of the 9 revolutions. And he was asking for respect for this superpowerful being ranked within the top 1,000 on this original planet, a being with numerous achievements. Such a fat lamb, he would gladly send them off. Apart from the Dao Lords, even a perfected 9 revolutions wouldn't be tolerated at this moment. Mo Long, our ancestor has helped your father immensely. How dare you treat us so disrespectfully? The Great Dream Clan girl's face was filled with anger, her expression one of incomprehension. The senior brother beside her tugged at her sleeve and whispered, Junior sister, something seems off. God, Emperor Mo Long sneered and nodded mockingly. All right, very well. Luo Hao, I'll give you a chance to explain. Why should one give them face? God Emperor Mo Long was planning to delay time anyway, waiting for the Taoists from the Great Luo realm to take the bait. He decided to play along. He had heard that people from the Great Dream Realm were like madmen. Today, he finally understood why those people avoided them. Explain. Luo Hao felt a glimmer of hope. He thought, this God Emperor Mo Long must have been enraged by these two fools before him. He wants to humiliate them through me. God Emperor Mo Long nodded, his anger evident. Yes, explain it to me properly. Why the hell should I give them face? For the alliance? Luo Hao cautiously ventured. God Emperor Mo Long shook his head, his voice filled with rage. Wrong, think harder. It can't possibly be for me. Luo Hao chuckled self-deprecatingly. I'll give you one last chance. Explain it to them properly. This time, Luo Hao fell into deep thought. This was a perfect opportunity to delay. He had to seize it. However, the two members of the Great Dream Clan couldn't bear it any longer. God Emperor Mo Long, if it's inconvenient, my junior sister and I will take our leave. The man from the Great Dream Clan said and then pulled his junior sister, preparing to leave. Junior sister, let's go. You're leaving. God Emperor Mo Long waved his hand, and a sky-piercing barrier descended, blocking their escape route. He smiled faintly. Don't be in a hurry. You wanted face, didn't you? I'll give it to you. Have you figured it out, Luo Hao? God Emperor Mo Long asked calmly. I have. Luo Hao nodded. His expression turned icy, and his eyes gleamed with killing intent as he looked at the two members of the Great Dream Clan. Remember, it's not that God Emperor Mo Long doesn't give you face. It's that you fools aren't worthy of killing me. Boom! Despite sustaining severe injuries, he was more than capable of dealing with these two fools. Mo Long, I never expected you to be this despicable. You refused to give face and resort to such tactics, letting Luo Hao, this scoundrel, handle us. The young woman from the Great Dream Clan shouted angrily as she retreated. Jian Wushuang, concealed in the void, couldn't stand it any longer. If it weren't for these two fools disrupting him, he might have already led God Emperor Mo Long and Luo Hao into the grand array. He could see that Luo Hao had the strength to swiftly deal with the two members of the Great Dream Realm. However, in order to buy time, he was entangled in a back-and-forth battle with the two fools from the Great Dream Clan. If this continued, his plan couldn't be executed at all. Swish! His figure flickered, and he appeared directly above the two Great Dream Clan members. With a swift half-circle sweep of his long spear, he sent the two men tumbling back tens of thousands of miles. "You fools!" Jian Wushuang muttered under his breath, then turned to look at Luo Hao. "Luo Hao, I'm sorry for being late," Jian Wushuang said. A faint smile on his Luo Hao couldn't help but tilt his head to look at Jian Wushuang. If it weren't for the God Emperor Mo Long, he would have wanted to strangle Jian Wushuang right then and there. He had finally found a reason to stall for time, and now Jian Wushuang had ruined it. Another one? God Emperor Mo Long was starting to question his life choices. Weren't these weak, perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals supposed to flee as far as possible when faced with a situation like this? Normally, these perfected 9 revolutions, who were too afraid to even watch from the sidelines, were now jumping in front of him one by one, seeking death. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation in the original universe. "What, are you here to save face too?" God Emperor Mo Long didn't seem to be in a hurry, speaking nonchalantly. Jian Wushuang retracted his long spear and held an illusory long sword in his hand. He spoke earnestly, "Your Majesty, God Emperor, Luo Hao and I share a bond of life and death. I had no choice but to come to his rescue. I hope you understand." As his words fell, Luo Hao was dumbfounded. Were these people intentionally making a mockery of him? First, 2 fools came looking to save face in front of God Emperor Mo Long and ended up being killed by him. And now, another one had come to save Luo Hao from the hands of God Emperor Mo Long. After this back and forth, he was really having trouble understanding the situation. God Emperor Mo Long, however, looked with interest at Jian Wushuang, nodded and said, "Jian Wushuang, I know you." The 2 members of the Daming clan who had been overturned in the distance were still somewhat unwilling to accept the situation. However, they also recognized Lian Wushuang at this moment. Both sides had encountered each other in the Qishui Hall. Tong Tian Buddha, with his immense power, was someone they had witnessed firsthand. So, they had a rough idea about some of the Grand Yen Immortals in the heaven-reaching Buddhist realm. In their eyes, Jian Wushuang seemed no more than an ordinary Grand Yen Immortal at the perfected 9 revolution stage. Weren't they the ones being chased by Luo Hao? Why would Jian Wushuang come to rescue Luo Hao? Not only were the 2 of them puzzled, but even Luo Hao himself was unclear why Jian Wushuang had turned back to save him. "Your Majesty, it's my honor to be remembered by you." Jian Wushuang showed great humility. He didn't want to anger the God Emperor Mo Long. If he could lead both of them into the grand formation without provoking the God Emperor, it would be perfect. In the outside world, he was at most comparable to a perfected 9 revolutions, but neither of these 2 individuals was his match. However, once inside the grand formation, he would have confidence. "You're impressive, being comparable to a 9 revolutions at the 3 revolutions level. You probably have the strength of an ordinary perfected 9 revolutions by the time you are 6 revolutions." God Emperor Mo Long vividly remembered Jian Wushuang's astonishing performance on the Universe Deity Demon list, ranking 160 millionth at the 3 revolutions and entering the top 100 million when he reached 6 revolutions. An existence that mastered the ultimate Tao. "What? He's a 6 revolutions!" exclaimed a man from the distant Great Dream Clan. "Being comparable to a perfected 9 revolutions at the 6th stage, how is that possible?" Among the numerous powerful beings in the entire universe, only a few paid attention to Jian Wushuang. Most of the powerful beings, apart from focusing on their own rankings, remembered the top 1,000 peerless geniuses in the universe. Luo Hao stood in the air and looked at the 2 members of the Great Dream Clan, saying coldly, "Fools, just because you can't achieve something doesn't mean others can't." Then his tone softened. It seems Brother Wuxia has mastered the ultimate Tao, unexpectedly reaching the level of being comparable to a perfected 9 revolutions when you're only at the 6 revolution stage. When you reach the realm of a perfected 9 revolutions in the Great Tao, you will probably be a half-step emperor. However, the young woman from the Great Dream Clan sneered, "Half-step emperor, after all, is still just a half-step emperor. Our ancestor is a true emperor." Humph! Luo Hao snorted and cursed. "Unless there no emperor in your Great Dream realm? Does my Daluo realm lack emperors? Isn't Brother Mo Long's father an emperor? In the heaven-reaching Buddhist realm where Brother Wuxia is from, isn't there an emperor? Have you forgotten the strength of the Tongtian Lord Buddha? That guy is stronger than your ancestor." What Luo Hao said wasn't entirely wrong. Indeed, who among them didn't have an emperor backing them up? The strength of the Great Dream Tao ancestor was unquestionable. He had ranked within the top 100 throughout the entire universe. In the Eastern Domain, one of the 5 major regions, he was among the top 20. Such power demanded respect. But in the Qixin Temple, individual strength mattered most, followed by the backing of one's faction. While the Great Dream Realm had considerable reputation, its influence was far from top tier. The Tao ancestor of the Great Dream was incredibly strong, yet he had few emperors under his command. Especially the 6th generation disciples of the Great Dream Realm present there were pitifully weak. A mere 3rd-grade source of the Great Tao and a perfected 9 revolutions, with such strength, they dared to seek face? They were speaking arrogantly, looking down on half-step emperors. It was simply a death wish. The trial had just begun, and the powerful beings of the Great Dream Realm on this primitive planet had almost been annihilated. Yet they hadn't learned humility. They still clung to the external standards of the outside world. Here, no one cared how powerful your ancestor was. If your individual strength wasn't enough, you were nothing. God Emperor Mo Long, despite being a prince, had been severely wounded by others. If he hadn't been a bit slower in his escape, he might have perished. Yet, he hadn't invoked his father's name to intimidate others. A true strong individual had self-awareness. Invoking the power behind you would only invite disdain and ultimately lead to humiliation and death. In the Qixin Temple, no one would chant praises for your ancestor, no matter how strong he was. Even if you were the son of a 5th-rank emperor, you'd be crushed. You, the young woman of the Great Dream Clan, was left speechless by the retort. In her heart, the Great Dream Tao ancestor and the Great Dream Realm had always been the core of the universe. How had they encountered such arrogant people just after leaving the Great Dream Realm? The man from the Great Dream Clan, however, bowed his head in silence. He had accepted his fate. In the Qixin Temple, things were fundamentally different from their homeland. No one fell for their tricks anymore. Humph! Just leave already. Jian Wuxia couldn't help but shout in anger. These two were simply wasting time. Wasn't it better to live peacefully? They insisted on courting death. How was it that God Emperor Mo Long was so patient? Why hadn't they obliterated them already? Sister, let's leave. The man from the Great Dream Clan couldn't bear it any longer. He was starting to get scared. No one present was to be trifled with. Jian Wuxia could easily crush both of them in his 6 revolutions cultivation. If they didn't leave, the Great Dream Clan might never have strong individuals again on the Alpha 9 original planet. The young woman from the Great Dream Clan's face turned red with anger. She didn't care anymore and shouted loudly, "Senior Brother Yang, how did you become so spineless? We are disciples of the Great Dream Realm. You disappoint me." The man from the Great Dream Clan glared at her, then said in a low voice, "Sister." Saying this, he grabbed the young woman's arm and pulled her back. "What are you doing?" The young woman from the Great Dream Clan struggled free from her senior brother's grip and shouted, "Don't you want to avenge sister for her humiliation?" Slap. A crisp sound of a slap echoed. The man from the Great Dream Clan had a blackened face. Without waiting for the young woman's reaction, another slap landed on her left cheek. The young woman from the Great Dream Clan stood in midair, staring blankly at her once familiar senior brother, her small red face now bearing 2 distinct slap marks. Her eyes turned red, and she was on the verge of tears. But seeing her senior brother's stern face, she felt fear now and dared not cry. "Everyone, my apologies for the abruptness, but we must leave now," said the man from the Great Dream Clan, his yen power enveloping his dazed junior sister, preparing to depart. Meanwhile, Luo Hao, who had been observing the spectacle, changed his focus. These two fools were about to leave, leaving the three of them to an inevitable fierce battle. Instead of letting them go, Luo Hao decided to detain them first, delaying them for a while. After settling his attention, Luo Hao spoke up. "You think you can just come and go as you please? Do you underestimate us?" Luo Hao glared at the two men, blades flying out behind him, blocking their way. God Emperor Mo long watched from the side, considering it quite a spectacle. Since Luo Hao wanted to play, he dared to prolong the situation. As for Jian Wushuang, he intended to kill him while his strength was still weak. With only perfected 9 revolutions level strength, he could be easily crushed and posed no real threat. Both of them were waiting, one for reinforcements and the other fishing. Jian Wushuang had no reinforcements. He had to be his own bait for the fishing. He couldn't afford to delay, but seeing the calm demeanor of the two men, he had no choice but to wait, without any solution. The more anxious he became, the more flaws he would reveal. It might raise suspicions with Luo Hao and the others, making the situation worse. "I'll wonder how we could earn your mercy," said the man from the Great Dream Clan, his demeanor no longer proud. Luo Hao glanced at God Emperor Mo Long first, realizing he was in no hurry. Then he continued, "We can spare you, but don't you think you're being very disrespectful to not even kneel in front of someone as powerful as Brother Mo Long? Do you understand my meaning?" The man from the Great Dream Clan nodded. "We understand." Whoosh! His figure rapidly descended, landing on a relatively flat stone surface. He bent his knees and knelt down. The Great Dream Clan, a humble cultivator, Yang Yuan, pays his respects to God Emperor Your Majesty. Yang Yuan, a cultivator from the Great Dream Clan, bowed his head between his knees. His body trembled not out of fear, but because of the immense shame he felt. This shame birthed a determination within him, a determination to become strong, unimaginably strong, so that no one would dare underestimate him. He wanted to grow powerful to the point where everyone would respect him. At this moment, he truly understood the teachings of his ancestors, regretting his lack of insight back then. "That's more like it," Luo Hao chuckled. "Now you can leave," he said. "Thank you." Yang Yuan slowly stood up, and with his junior sister, he soared into the sky, soon disappearing from view. This humiliation would change Yang Yuan's life. When he became strong enough, however, he would never find Luo Hao and God Emperor Mo Long again. Jian Wushuang breathed a sigh of relief. It was finally over. Now it was his turn to perform. "Luo Hao, my friend, it's time for us to leave too," Jian Wushuang said with a hint of amusement, looking at Luo Hao. The three of them formed a triangle, each maintaining a distance of thousands of miles from the other. This distance wasn't much. If they attacked, they could reach each other in an instant. Indeed, Luo Hao smiled slightly, and in an instant, he charged toward Jian Wushuang. "Kid, do you really think Mo Long and I are fools?" He had sensed something was amiss the moment Jian Wushuang arrived. A 6 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal suddenly appeared to save him, especially from the hands of God Emperor Mo Long. This move was even more foolish than the actions of the two people from the Great Dream Clan. However, Jian Wushuang did not seem like an idiot. He knew that there had to be a reason behind his actions. Both he and Mo Long were peak-level Grand Yen Immortals. There was no way they would allow a 6 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal to take advantage of the situation. Die! Flying blades instantly struck, and Jian Wushuang swiftly fled in the direction of the valley. Indeed, the peak experts of Grand Yen Immortal were no fools. When the situation was exposed, he had no choice but to flee, relying on his extraordinary speed, a confidence he had maintained, a risk he wouldn't have taken otherwise. God Emperor Mo Long. Luo Hao is clearly stalling for time. Why don't we join forces and kill him first? Jian Wushuang said urgently. unwilling to let the opportunity slip away, shouting to God Emperor Mo Long, who was catching up behind them. Jian Wushuang, if you were just an ordinary 9 revolutions, I wouldn't bother with you. Blame yourself for grasping the ultimate Tao. Your threat is much stronger than Luo Hao's. God Emperor Mo Long's speed was astonishing. In an instant, he overtook Luo Hao and headed straight for Jian Wushuang. A Yen immortal who mastered the ultimate Tao could, with the backing of a major power, reach the level of a half-step emperor. With the significant cultivation support from Qishan Temple, as long as Jian Wushuang entered the top 1,000 and received the bestowed treasures, comprehending the Qishan Grand Tao, his strength would ascend rapidly. He would soon become a perfected 9 revolutions. Achieving perfected 9 revolutions was just an opportunity, not a significant bottleneck. Such half-step emperors in the making had to be eliminated early. One less opponent meant one less threat. Although his Tao was considered top-notch, the disparity between his path and the ultimate Tao was still enormous. He was confident about entering the top 100 on this original planet. But in the entire universe, he was inconsequential, merely possessing more treasures and relatively stronger combat power. His true potential was not exceptionally high. Being able to effortlessly kill a future half-step emperor excited God Emperor Mo Long greatly. In some worlds, there wasn't even a glimpse of the ultimate Tao. Across the entire universe, there were only a handful who had reached the perfected 9 revolution stage. Boom! Golden fist shadows transformed into a wandering dragon, charging at Jian Wushuang. So close! Jian Wushuang desperately shielded himself toward the gorge. The speed of the chasing dragon behind him was faster than God Emperor Mo Long himself, catching up to the fleeing Jian Wushuang within a breath. Heart Sword World! Jian Wushuang roared. Hold it for me! The world of swords descended in an instant, significantly slowing down the pursuing dragon. Then it began disintegrating the source of the great Lao within the dragon. His ultimate sword Tao had already reached the 6th level, capable of suppressing an 8th-level source great Tao. The dragon, after all, was just a technique executed by God Emperor Mo Long. Its power, while formidable, was merely a separated part of the original source. What? God Emperor Mo Long's figure swiftly surpassed the crumbling dragon, astonished by the immense power of the ultimate Tao. Could it really suppress his source of the great Tao? Was this the might of the ultimate Tao, fated to be an emperor? On this side, Luo Hao's figure spun around, avoiding the wandering dragon. At this moment, he was considering whether to take the opportunity to escape in the opposite direction. Among the 3, Mo Long was the fastest, followed by Jian Wushuang, and he was the slowest. He had a chance to escape at this moment. As long as Jian Wushuang could hold off the God Emperor Mo Long for just 2 breaths, he could get away. Unfortunately, he had chosen the wrong side just now. If he had cooperated with Jian Wushuang, he might have been tricked. However, there would have been a slim chance of survival. If he cooperated with Mo Long, after Jian Wushuang fell, it would be his turn. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang's combat power was not strong, but his speed was very fast, enough to barely hold his own for a while. On Jian Wushuang's side, the canyon was getting closer and closer. Although the Heartsword World had blocked the wandering dragon, it couldn't hinder the God Emperor Mo Long, not even affecting Luo Hao. We're almost there, just 1,000 miles away. We'll be there in a breath. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up. However, in Mo Long's heart, there was some impatience. He felt a looming threat all around him. Who could it be? The experts of the heaven-reaching Buddhist realm were not well known to him, only Tao Lord Zhouyu. His strength was among the top 500 in the entire universe. However, he hadn't even earned a spot on this primitive planet. The remaining strongest ones were only peak Grand Yen Immortals, ranking behind him. He wasn't afraid at all. As for the Great Sea region, as a prince, he had extensive experiences accompanying his father. He knew that Emperor Zhen Wuyang had aligned himself with the Eternal Tower. Meanwhile, Jian Wushuang, a Grand Yen Immortal of the Great Sea region, had appeared among the crowds in the heaven-reaching Buddhist realm. Clearly, Jian Wushuang had joined the heaven-reaching Buddhist realm. The biggest challenge would likely be the perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal of the heaven-reaching Buddhist realm. What are his trump cards, exactly? God Emperor Mo Long's figure drew nearer to Jian Wushuang, the threat intensifying. Who is this threat? Don't care. Kill him first. God Emperor Mo Long, with a sudden motion, summoned a sealing scroll that instantly suppressed the land for millions of miles around. Buzz! The sky birthed the yin-yang sealing diagram, and the earth shifted, revealing an 8-sided prison. You can't escape. God Emperor Mo Long bellowed angrily, releasing a majestic aura. A beam of light shot out almost instantaneously, piercing through Jian Wushuang's body. No! Just one more step, hurry! Jian Wushuang roared in frustration within his heart. In the moment before his divine body completely disintegrated, he flickered once again, falling into the Great Canyon Formation. God Emperor Mo Long revealed a satisfied smile. He could sense Jian Wushuang's aura growing weaker, devoid of any resistance. Luo Hao, go into the canyon and bring out Jian Wushuang. Don't play tricks. You know what I'm capable of, God Emperor Mo Long threatened. The sealing scroll was a prehistoric treasure that only Emperor-level beings could fully utilize. Mo Long's perfected 9 revolution strength could only cover millions of miles. With Emperor-level power, it could extend to billions of miles, even covering an entire world, suppressing countless powerful beings. Such a treasure was now in the hands of a perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal. Luo Hao felt both envious and jealous. As one of the 10 princes of the Daluo domain, he had only acquired an ordinary innate treasure after entering the Qishan Temple. Moreover, it was just a moderately valuable single-target offensive treasure. Even 1,000 such treasures wouldn't compare to the innate treasure like the sealing scroll. Aren't you afraid I'll enter the canyon and join forces with Jian Wushuang against you? Luo Hao, standing side by side with Mo Long, asked, his feet on the crescent-shaped flying blade. You're welcome to try. God Emperor Mo Long replied calmly. Luo Hao posed minimal threat to him, to the point that he could be considered no threat at all. Mo Long's treasure was extremely effective against someone like Luo Hao, who lacked speed and proficiency in close combat as a Grand Yen Immortal. In terms of strength, Luo Hao could maintain the peak state of the Grand Yen Immortal by burning his source. Root issues were not a concern. Inside the canyon, Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged within a formation. Luckily, he had killed several Grand Yen Immortals and obtained numerous pills from them. At this moment, he swallowed them all in an attempt to accelerate the recovery of his yen power, which had been depleted in the recent battle. That last strike had nearly completely shattered his divine body. If it were an ordinary Grand Yen Immortal of the ultimate Tao, that strike would have been fatal. Fortunately, he mastered the extreme Tao. His divine body was 100 times stronger than the ultimate Tao. His yen power was more abundant than any other Grand Yen Immortal, but even so, that blow had instantly torn through his body, causing a significant loss of yen power. Currently, the only way to repair his body was to use pills to replenish his yen power. The restorative power of the extreme Tao source was incredibly potent. Although his divine body was injured by that strike, it hadn't caused any harm to the source's great Tao. As long as the source remained intact, he could rapidly recover his divine body. This was the advantage of the extreme Tao over the ultimate Tao. The source was exceptionally powerful. Ordinary attacks could hardly harm it. Possessing the source also allowed for a rapid recovery of the divine body. This single point made countless people envious. God Emperor Mo Long's divine body was on the brink of collapse and took countless treasures a year to recover. In contrast, injuries in the ultimate Tao required just a day, while those in the extreme path, especially for Jian Wushuang, only required the time it took to drink a cup of tea. Need the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. Hu Qing, can you hold on? Jian Wushuang's voice was somewhat weak as he looked at the young novice monk, Hu Qing, in front of him. At some point, Hu Oing had become remarkably upright. He held a brown-red staff in his robe, his thick eyebrows giving his exceptionally determined black eyes an imposing air. His aura was several times stronger than before. Hu Qing nodded. Brother Wushuang, rest assured. One will do my best to delay them, Hu Qing said with a faint smile. In the art of Zen, one excels in battling with informations. As long as it concerns the ultimate way, there are no weak primal sources. Even though he had just broken through the 9 revolutions, his combat power was comparable to that of a peak-perfected 9 revolutions. Relying on formations, he was no weaker than God Emperor Mo Long. With a swift movement, Hu Qing entered the center of the formation. His long staff tilted, waiting calmly for the enemy to arrive. In just a breath's time, Luo Hao from the outside world descended into the formation. However, he couldn't sense the presence of the formation at all. All he saw was the young monk Hu Qing standing alone on the slope of the gorge. "Are you Jian Wushuang's protector?" Luo Hao sneered. The person before him seemed to be at the 9 revolutions level. He couldn't believe he would encounter 2 beings who controlled the ultimate Tao in one day. Without the ultimate Tao, a 9 revolutions, no matter how strong, could only match an ordinary perfected 9 revolutions at best. Hu Qing suppressed his sharp aura. He knew there was another person in the outside world. He had to lure that person here as well. He needed to reveal a flaw first so that God Emperor Mo Long could see it. Once both of them entered the formation, he would activate the Wuliang Grand Formation, trapping the opponent and slowly depleting their strength. If there's no one else, then prepare to die. Luo Hao sensed no danger whatsoever. He immediately took action, and his flying blade shot towards Hu Qing. Moonlight Shadow. He went all out from the start. He wanted to see the true strength of this leader of the monks from the heaven-reaching Buddhist realm. If, as he suspected, the monk's strength was mediocre, he would kill him effortlessly and then find his way out. If you could withstand his attack, he would switch sides and cooperate with the opponent. Jian Wushuang had mastered the ultimate Tao, recovering rapidly. As long as they could hold God Emperor Mo Long back, waiting for Jian Wushuang to fully regain his strength, the 3 of them could join forces and have a chance at survival. While Luo Hao was making plans, he was unaware that the God Emperor Mo Long outside had already seen through everything. Smack! Hu Qing stomped the ground fiercely, soaring into the sky, his moonlight shadow cleaving a towering mountain into 2 halves. This was just one moonlight shadow attack. Countless more followed, leaving Hu Qing with no place to hide. Countless moonlight shadows, shattered with a single strike. A towering reddish-brown staff smashed down, colliding with the moonlight shadows. Countless moon blades clashed against the brown staff, but they couldn't inflict any damage, falling to the ground like shattered ice. The staff swept through the entire canyon, dispersing numerous moonlight shadows. Luo Hao leaped out of the valley just in time to evade that terrifying strike. Not bad, some real power. Luo Hao turned around and smiled, the crescent moon blade beneath his feet slashing out. A buzzing sound tore through the air, assaulting the ears. Hu Qing gritted his teeth, his staff returning to its original size, barely managing to block the crescent moon blade with his impeccable staff techniques. The transcendent innate treasure, the crescent moon blade, clashed violently with the staff several times. Luo Hao, manipulating the blade from afar, frowned. He murmured, "Is perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal also equipped with an innate treasure?" Initially, he had thought that, among the numerous great worlds, being a prince from a higher world and obtaining a transcendent innate treasure when he entered the Qixin Temple was already a mark of significant attention. Now, encountering the eccentric God Emperor Mo Long, the amount of treasures he possessed was staggering. He had far more treasures than an average second-tier emperor, with several top-grade transcendent innate treasures alone. Common innate treasures were even more abundant. This monk from the heaven-reaching Buddhist realm before him also possessed innate treasures. The power he displayed was much stronger than his crescent moon blade, just by revealing a fraction of its might. Without this reddish-brown staff, he wouldn't have been able to hold him off for so long. One innate treasure could make a 9 revolutions comparable to a top-tier perfected 9 revolutions. That was the charm of transcendent innate treasures. Just like Demon Lord Fengyu, who wielded an eternal treasure, she possessed the strength of a peak emperor, perpetually suppressing all enemies. Qi Shui had to lead a large group of strong individuals just to negotiate with Demon Lord Fengyu. If those forces hadn't formed a coalition, Demon Lord Fengyu, with the Eternal Tower, could have subdued any top-tier force in any region. Even within other peak forces, not everyone necessarily had an eternal treasure. After all, the power of eternal treasures could affect the battle prowess of a Tier 5 emperor, making these treasures rare even among Tier 5 emperors. Emperors would only bestow them upon disciples if it didn't impact their own battle strength. Just like the ruler of the Daluo realm, who possessed an outstanding set of transcendent innate treasures, the remaining innate treasures became insignificant. During the Qishan Temple's opening, the treasury was unlocked, and half of the treasures were bestowed upon their subordinates. Of course, most of these were given to the emperors under his command, as they were the main core of this conflict. The other emperors would only be given innate treasures that the 10 princes and some chief disciples didn't find appealing. Apart from the 10 princes in the Daluo realm, there were also some chief disciples of emperors who would receive innate treasures. These 10 princes were only cultivated under the reign of the Daluo realm's ruler. Although they had prestigious status on the surface in terms of treasures, they were not as well off as the direct disciples of those emperors, especially figures like God Emperor Mo Long. He simply looked down upon these so-called princes.